Chapter 548. After a night of rest, the Southern Punitive Army was ready to move out. The soldiers packed up the thick tents and placed them in the carriages used by the logistics department. They did not have so many space bags to use. The Grand Marshal of the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Punitive Army, McKinty, had been feeling uneasy recently. He kept feeling that something bad was about to happen. He had lost contact with several of the cavalry units he sent out. To the main force of the 500,000 Southern Punitive Army, this loss was naturally not worth mentioning. However, McKinty felt that it was not so simple. He stood on a small hill with his hands behind his back and fell into deep thought. Lord Marshal. McKinty raised his head slightly and saw the Holy Maiden walking towards him. Lady Holy Maiden. McKinty frowned, but he could not help but maintain his superficial courtesy. He bowed slightly. How much longer until we reach Manchester? The Holy Maiden asked calmly. About 2 more days. Why? McKinty squinted his eyes. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes as he replied. Nothing, just asking. The Holy Maiden's face was covered with a veil, so no one could see her expression clearly. It was unknown whether she was happy or angry. At this moment, a soldier quickly ran over. Upon seeing McKinty, he anxiously said, "Not good. Lord Marshal, something has happened." What? McKinty was stunned for a moment before he hurried over. What exactly is going on? McKinty asked as he walked. We've discovered traces of the attackers. The soldier replied, one of the scouting units we sent out was attacked. The entire unit was wiped out. Only the captain is still alive, but he won't be able to live for much longer. The soldier replied. As they spoke, the 2 of them had already arrived at the Southern Punitive Army's temporary infirmary. The temporary infirmary was made up of several large tents. The light was dim, and on the temporary bed laid a man covered in blood. His eyes were tightly shut, and there was a deep wound on his chest. Lord Marshal. That man was the officer who had been injured by the Black Knights. He forced himself to crawl back and managed to keep his life. Seeing McKinty enter, he opened his eyes with difficulty. What happened? Who injured you to this extent? Priest. Where's the priest? McKinty was shocked and immediately shouted. Reporting to Marshal, the priest is rushing over from the camp. We have already sent people to urge him. A soldier immediately reported. Tell him to hurry up. Saving people is more important. McKinty still loved his soldiers like his own children, otherwise there wouldn't be so many soldiers willing to risk their lives for him. Lord Marshal, I have urgent military news to report to you, the officer said with difficulty. Our small team was scouting when we encountered 2 necromancers, all annihilated. What did you say? Necromancer? Meadow was shocked. He suspected that he had heard wrongly. In his impression, the necromancer, who had never had any combat strength, had actually killed the entire scouting team. Was this a myth or a fairy tale? What? It's actually a necromancer. The Holy Maiden's body trembled. It turned out that she had secretly followed them. Saintus. Only then did Machinta and the soldiers discover the Holy Maiden, and they all saluted her. However, the Holy Maiden acted as if she did not see them, and muttered, How is this possible? Could it be? A familiar face appeared in her mind. Impossible. How can he still be alive in this world? The Holy Maiden shook her head. It's impossible for someone who has been ordered to kill to still be alive. I must be thinking too much. The Holy Maiden's gaze fell on the officer's wound, but she discovered that he had already breathed his last. Sigh. McKinty had wanted to ask more about the situation, but who knew that he had already died? He could only sigh and slowly close his eyes. He turned his head, and only then did he discover that the priest had just entered and was looking at him, not knowing what to do. McKinty gave a dissatisfied humph, and with a wave of his sleeves, he walked out. Who on earth injured him? Could it be the Abia rebels? Humph, I don't believe that it's a necromancer. McKinty, who had never seen the power of a necromancer, simply did not believe that a necromancer would possess such great power. If they had such power, they wouldn't need to perform tricks on the streets for entertainment. Lord Marshal, the Southern Expedition Army is about to set off. At this moment, a soldier ran in to report. Then let's set off. McKinty waved his hand and said, But, Lord Marshal, The soldier was somewhat hesitant, his tone stuttering. McKinty's brows furrowed, and his expression was somewhat unlike a pornographic novel. What do you want to say? Our rations won't be able to last much longer. The soldier replied, from yesterday until now, the rations from Amuffa City have not been delivered. What? McKinney jumped up upon hearing this. How could this be? The rations of the army were related to the movements of the entire Southern Expedition Army. Bastard. This time, McKinney immediately became anxious. He glared and said fiercely, what about the rations? Reporting to Lord Marshal. At this moment, another soldier ran in to report. He shouted loudly, Lord Marshal, bad news, Amuffa City. Amuffa City has been captured. What? McKinney's eyes were bloodshot. He grabbed the soldier's collar and roared. What the hell is going on? Say it again. The soldier was frightened by the Lord Marshal. His entire body trembled as he stuttered. According to news from the rear, Amuffa City has been captured. All the rations have been burned. Burned. The soldier's voice was very loud. Everyone around heard it. Their mouths were wide open as they stood there in a daze. The saint also heard it. What did you say? The rations were also burned? McKinney roared. At this moment, he seemed to have thought of something and let go of the soldier. Yes. Lord Marshal, what do we do now? The soldier was still in shock. However, he did not see the killing intent that flashed across McKinney's eyes. McKinney took a few steps back and turned around, revealing his back. Suddenly, a bright light flashed from his waist, and a ray of light was flung out. Swish, The soldier clutched his neck tightly as a line of blood slowly appeared. He tried his best to widen his eyes and looked at McKinney in disbelief. Even in death, he did not understand why the Lord Marshal wanted to kill him. McKinney took a step forward and pointed at the soldier's corpse on the ground. He coldly said to the crowd, This person is a spy. I have been keeping an eye on him for a long time. He spread false information with the intention of disrupting the morale of the army. According to military law, he should be executed. Only then did the surrounding people come to a realization. However, even more people were still skeptical. They only heard Melchior's loud voice ring out. Now, I order the army to immediately move out and reach Manchester as quickly as possible. Yes. The soldiers replied loudly. Only then did Machinta breathe a sigh of relief. If he hadn't used some tricks, the morale of the soldiers would have long been in chaos. This southern expedition against the Ebia rebels would have turned into a complete joke. Lord Marshal, what's wrong? Although McKinty's abnormal actions could fool the crowd, he could not fool the intelligent Saintess. She walked up to McKinty and asked softly. The Saintess represented the Holy See in supervising the battle, so McKinney naturally would not hide anything from her. He said softly, Amuffa City has been breached, and all the food has been burned. What? The Saintess could not believe her ears. The heavily guarded Amuffa City had actually been breached? How could this be? Now, we can only hide it from everyone and force the army to move faster so that we could take down Manchester in one fell swoop. Otherwise, we will not have good days ahead. McKinty whispered into the Saintess' ear. The movement of a 500,000-strong army was not something that could be done casually. McKinty divided his army into 3 groups and moved forward together, moving steadily and cautiously wherever he went. However, Juliana also had a countermeasure. She had implemented a scorched earth policy around Manchester. McKinty's army could not find a single grain of food or even a single person within the borders of Manchester. Even the water source had been poisoned. McKinney was helpless and could only order the army to move faster. At the same time, he did his best to suppress the news of Amuffa City's destruction. Even so, the soldiers who had not eaten for 2 consecutive meals could still vaguely guess what had happened. Rumors began to spread. After more than a day of rushing, the 500,000-strong army of the Holy Roman Empire finally arrived at Manchester. In front of Manchester, hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire were lined up in neat formations. They were so densely packed that one could not see the end of them. No matter who it was who saw such a formidable and majestic army, their legs would have long since turned to jelly from fright. Manchester was currently completely shrouded in a black fog. White bones constantly flickered in and out of the fog, causing one to be unable to clearly see the scenery within. Within the black fog, one or two mournful screams that sounded like they came from hell would occasionally sound out, causing one's hair to stand on end. The entire Manchester was like an impenetrable castle. This is Manchester? McKinney could not suppress the shock on his face. Why is it different from what I expected? It seems to emit a demonic and evil aura. The saint's brows furrowed slightly. I don't know why, but I keep having a bad premonition. Have they finally arrived? McKinney could not see Manchester, which was the scene within the City of Gloom. However, from the City of Gloom, he could see everything clearly. Juliana stood on a high observation platform, quietly observing the outside with a relaxed smile on her face. The canopy of necromancy. This magic formation that had been set up in the City of Gloom was constantly releasing dark fog, enveloping the entire City of Gloom in black fog. The City of Gloom was now 10 times larger than the City of Manchester. It was already filled with all kinds of mechanisms. The black fog was wrapped in a deep murderous aura, ensuring that the invaders would not be able to return. Without rations, the battle line had been stretched too far, and they had the geographical advantage. In addition to the support magic formations set up by the necromancers, such as the canopy of necromancers, Juliana was already 80% confident in this battle. Miss, they're finally here. Lachlan's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. He rubbed his fists and rubbed his palms, wanting to go all out. I see them. Juliana calmly waved her hand. Everyone, get into position. Everything will proceed according to the original plan. As she spoke, she glanced at Vivian. The necromancers will carry out the first wave of attack. Chapter 549. A great battle was about to begin, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. Catherine stood beside Juliana, her beautiful eyes staring at the army of the Holy Roman Empire. Her eyes revealed a worried expression. Sister, Ron hasn't returned yet. Should we wait for him to return before? No need. Juliana waved her hand. It will be too late if we wait for him to return. Now is the best time to take the initiative and attack. Seeing her sister's confidence, Catherine didn't know what to say. She bit her lips and retreated to the side. As a member of the Ebian rebels, she was also waiting for orders. I think we should test it out first. Looking at Manchester in the black fog, McKinney frowned. After obtaining the Saint's approval, he ordered the vanguard of the Holy Roman Empire to attack. Dong! 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 Drums sounded, and the horn of battle sounded. In an instant, a heaven-shaking killing intent filled the air, covering the sky with a layer of dark clouds. Slaughter them, kill, kill, kill. The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire slammed their sword against their shields, creating a neat and fierce sound. Hundreds of thousands of people roared in unison, causing some of the more cowardly Ebian rebels to tremble in fear. Charge! Under the command of the vanguard's commander, several thousand cavalrymen rushed out with a bang. The Holy Empire soldiers on their huge horses brandished all kinds of weapons. Behind these cavalrymen were countless infantry. They roared as they surged forward like a tide. It was just a probing attack, but McKinney had invested 20,000 soldiers. If they were to meet force with force, these 20,000 soldiers would be enough to crush the Ebian rebels. Pung! The vanguard army charged into the black fog. What's going on? I can't see anything. What is this place? Quickly retreat. Retreat! Manchester was filled with black fog, and it was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. The vanguard soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire knew that something was wrong. They wanted to retreat, but a large number of soldiers behind them blocked their retreat. Those soldiers who had experienced hundreds of battles generally had keen intuition. They could even clearly feel that something in the darkness was watching them. The war horses snorted uneasily, and the killing intent continued to spread. The unknown was the most frightening, and the soldiers were thrown into confusion. The necromancers in the black fog could see everything clearly. They used the night vision skill. In the darkness, every move of the Holy Roman Empire soldiers couldn't escape their eyes. The necromancers didn't move. They were like nighthawks, quietly hiding and waiting for the order to attack. At this moment, Vivian opened her eyes with a whoosh. She waved the legendary staff of dark water that Ron had given her. Her body was covered in black fog, and traces of soul aura frantically surged out. Kill! Vivian gave the order, and a bone spear was suddenly thrown out. The eerie bone spear drew an arc in the air, and with a strong sound of breaking through the air, it suddenly struck the enemy. Ah! A miserable cry came from the darkness, and a bone spear ruthlessly pierced an officer's chest. The huge horse beneath him neighed loudly, and his body turned into a pornographic novel. He fell down powerlessly. This was the signal to attack. Under Vivian's command, the necromancers in the darkness became active. They revealed themselves, and bone spears, bone spurs, bone arrows, and other necromancy magic were continuously thrown at the soldiers. At the same time, countless skeletons drilled out from the ground. The summoned skeletons were like the undead from hell. They waved the weapons in their hands, and their eyes flashed with a faint green light. They pounced on the soldiers like wolves and tigers. Oh, what the hell is this? The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire cried out in fright. Seeing those moving skeletons in such a dark place made their hair stand on end. The vanguard was suddenly thrown into chaos. Under the attack of the skeleton army, the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire scattered in all directions. They didn't know where to go in their panic, and some of them fell head first into the group of skeletons and were instantly dismembered by the skeleton warriors wielding heavy weapons. The black fog of the canopy of necromancy, other than blocking the enemy's vision, also had the effect of blocking sound. When the vanguard soldiers rushed in, not a single sound came out. It was as if they were silently swallowed up by the darkness. Not good. After the vanguard army entered Manchester, there was no news of them. A trace of unease flashed through the hearts of McKinney and the Saintess. They looked at each other, unable to hide the fear in their hearts. What's going on? What kind of magic formation is this, to be so powerful? McKinney was both shocked and suspicious. Feeling the terror of the magic formation, he suddenly had the urge to retreat. The Saintess, standing by the side, smiled faintly. Her eyes that were tightly wrapped in a veil revealed a look of contempt. It's just a small trick. However, this eerie aura of death really disgusts me. Hearing this, McKinney was delighted. Saintess, do you have a way? Watch carefully. The Saintess sneered. She took out a two-handed staff from under her pure white priest robes. Taking a step forward, she stretched out her white, jade-like arm. Her 5 fingers spread open as she chanted, "O great God Guangming, use your powerful magic to drive away the boundless darkness. Like the bright lamp in the sea of bitterness, guide the lost travelers to find their way forward." The Saintess chanted in a low voice, a holy light circulating around her body. Her face was filled with a pious expression. Suddenly, the Saintess' eyes widened. Her eyes shone brightly as she shouted, "Dispel." This is a master-level dispel. This Saintess is actually a peak master-level powerhouse. Seeing this scene, McKinney was shocked beyond words. What shocked him even more was the Saintess' strength. This young Saintess was actually a peak master-level powerhouse, an existence that was just one step away from the sacred domain. Boom! It was as if a fist of light had broken through the sky, or as if the sun had shone on the snow. In a trance, a snow-white figure descended from the sky. She spread her wings like an angel descending. She held a long sword in her hand, and with a gentle wave, a holy power surged out. The black fog melted like snow in spring when it came in contact with the light. The undercity that was shrouded in fog finally revealed a small part of the iceberg. What? The powerful force attracted Vivian's attention. Under the illumination of the white figure in the sky, the haze was swept away. All the necromancers had nowhere to hide and were exposed to the sunlight. The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire who were trapped in the Undercity saw this scene and were energized. They shouted and fought with the necromancers. This aura? Is it the Holy Church? Vivian was shocked. Her eyes instantly locked onto a figure on a small hill in front of the Undercity. That figure was obviously a woman. She was wearing a pure white priest's robe with the Holy Church's angel symbol pinned on her chest. Vivian's face darkened. So is her doing. The holy power has been restraining us. If this continues, the situation will become more and more disadvantageous for us. We have to get rid of her. Vivian rolled her eyes, and a cold smile flashed across her face. She wrapped her black robe, and her figure gradually disappeared into the air. As expected of His Majesty the Pope's student, the Saintess is really powerful. McKinney gave a heartfelt thumbs up. Originally, he was a little conflicted with the Saintess, but now he was completely convinced. He quietly stared at Manchester, and a trace of excitement flashed through his eyes. As long as we disperse this black fog, the whole of Manchester will be exposed in front of us. With our superior military strength, we will be able to break through the city in less than a day. At that time, we will be the heroes of the Holy Roman Empire. Facing McKinney's praise, the Saintess smiled proudly and didn't answer. Be careful. Suddenly, as if she had a premonition, the Saintess's heart was alarmed. She shouted and leaned back. Whoosh! A white shadow appeared out of thin air. It was extremely fast and carried a strong sound as it broke through the air. It attacked the Saintess and flashed past her delicate face. It was a white bone spur that pierced through the stone wall behind the Saintess. The Saintess was still in a state of shock. She only felt her face burning, alternating between green and white. If it had been just a little bit more, her tender and delicate face would have been ruined. However, her veil was knocked off, revealing a delicate and beautiful face. Who dares to sneak attack the Saintess? The guards beside the Saintess shouted loudly. Swish, swish. They drew their swords and protected the Saintess behind them. Holy See, hee, today is the day you die. At this time, a gloomy voice sounded. A figure slowly emerged from behind a tree. She was Vivian. She had a faint smile on her face, and her expression didn't change in the face of the many soldiers surrounding her. Seeing the newcomer, the Saintess was clearly stunned. You are Teacher Vivian? Vivian was also stunned. Looking at the familiar face of the Saintess, she felt like she had seen her somewhere before. You are a student of the Balarax Academy. What's your name again? My name is God Eli, the Saintess calmly said. She said her name for the first time. I'm the Saintess of the Holy See, Guangming, God Eli. God Eli. God Eli. Vivian murmured. Her mind flashed. I remember now. You are a student of the Balarax Academy's Fire Magician Elite class. You only studied for 1 year before dropping out. Is that you? Yes, that's me. The Saintess nodded. Vivian looked at Godeli's holy priest robe and the dazzling angel badge of the Holy See. With a trace of hesitation, she asked, You're a priest of the Holy See? Yes. After dropping out, I returned to the Holy Roman Empire and received the baptism of the Holy See on Mount Hygel. Saintess Godeli paused and smiled. Now, I have abandoned the trashy fire magic and successfully become a priest. Follow the footsteps of the gods. Spread the glory of the gods. O great God of light. Your light has shone on the entire continent, and all the gods have lost their splendor in front of you. Godeli's face was filled with fanaticism. Her voice had a powerful influence, and even the soldiers around her showed a firm expression of faith. Vivian frowned and muttered softly, Lunatic! I've always been curious. As the territory of the Holy Roman Empire, how can there be evil necromancers in the Abia province? God Eli smiled. Minor Vivian, so it was you who did this. So what? Vivian snorted coldly. After knowing that this former student was a member of the Holy See, her tone carried a hint of hostility. Saintess God Eli waved her hand in motion for her subordinates to put down their weapons. She smiled and said, Minter Vivian, you must know that the necromancy magic you practice is a symbol of evil, decay, and depravity. It does not belong in this world, and it does not belong in the Holy See. As a former student of the Balarax Academy, I do not wish to see you straying down the wrong path again. When the glory of God shines on the entire continent, the power of evil will be like a shadow in the corner. However, God is merciful, and God is Guangming. He will guide the lost travelers and guide them to Guangming. Come, Minter Vivian, give up your rotten necromancy magic and accept the baptism of the Holy See. Enter the embrace of God Guangming. This is the only way out for you, Minter. Chapter 550. Vivian snorted coldly. You don't have to worry about that, God Eli. You're a very good student, but the God Guangming that you speak of disgusts me. I have been looking for you all this time, but unfortunately, Vice Dean Dabbs lied to me. It turns out that you have been hiding in the academy all this time. Now, you're even colluding with the Abir rebels and going against the Holy See. I think that you necromancers are probably tired of living, right? God Eli smiled. Teacher Vivian, don't force me to take action. Follow me back to Mount Hygel. His Majesty Pope is magnanimous. As long as you sincerely repent, the gods will forgive you. Is that possible? Vivian sneered. There is no compromise between you and me. When God Eli heard this, her face instantly darkened. Deep murderous intent flashed in her clear eyes. Those who blaspheme the god Guangming deserve to die. Without any movement, God Eli sneered, and a beam of light instantly attacked. Whitebone shield. Vivian was already prepared. With a smile, black fog madly swirled in her palm, and a huge white, jade-like bone shield instantly formed. Boom! The beam of light hit the white bone shield, causing the space to tremble slightly. God Eli, the great Guangming priest, held a long staff with both hands. A force like a light membrane enveloped her entire body. Her hair was loose, and the aura of a peak master-level expert was unparalleled. She radiated light in all directions like a holy goddess descending. Vivian, the Necromancer Grand Magus, held an orange-red bone staff in one hand. Her entire body was wrapped in a black robe, and she appeared mysterious and elegant. Her body was surrounded by a thin layer of black fog, and her aura was not inferior to Godeli's. The two of them continued to accumulate their auras. A battle between Guangming and darkness, between justice and evil, and between magic and magic was about to begin. Stubborn traveler, the rotten, the evil, and the filthy will sink forever. The righteous, Guangming, and the holy will be elevated forever, God Eli chanted loudly. As her voice became louder and louder, holy light radiated in all directions like the sun, burning fiercely. The reason why the God loves the world is to remove all filth. The reason why the God loves the world is to expel all darkness. Come out the inextinguishable holy flame, God Eli pulled with her left hand, and a powerful flame appeared in her hand. It was like a naughty child, dancing continuously. The powerful holy flame, which was mixed with the holy light. It was like a bright lamp in the darkness. In the face of Godeli's powerful aura, Vivian was not to be outdone. She chanted a magic spell in a low voice. In the burning castle, the helpless princess is crying. The dead general. The corpse is still facing the castle. Dead warrior, why are your eyes filled with tears? In order to protect the one I love the most, I will transform into a horror knight and return from hell. Come out, terror knight. Vivian shouted and waved her bone staff. From the hexagram of light, a tall and imposing figure slowly rose. The heavily armored terror knight held a huge longsword and stood majestically in front of God Eli, exuding a powerful aura. Godeli's heart trembled. What a powerful undead creature. It seems that undead magic really can't be underestimated. Go, kill this holy sea's lackey. Vivian ordered and directed the terror knight to attack God Eli. Protect the Saintess. Be careful, Saintess. At this moment, the Saintess's knights all shouted. The heavily armored holy knights stood around God Eli without hesitation. Their bodies were constantly entwined with mysterious runes, and as the light flowed, the holy knight's defense was greatly strengthened. The terror knight, who had returned from hell, was burning with powerful black flames. Its eyes shone brightly as it waved its huge long sword and slashed at the nearest holy knight. Boom! The holy knight raised his holy shield and met the terror knight's attack head-on. In that clash, the holy shield was shattered, and his defense was broken. The holy knight spat out a mouthful of blood and frantically retreated a few dozen steps. The terror knight was like an indestructible tank, and the holy knights, who were known for their defense, were beaten to a pulp. There was no other way, as the terror knight was just too powerful. Die! Godeli's eyes flashed wildly, and the holy flame blasted down, finally ending the terror knight's invincible attack. Kill! Vivian held the bone spear in her hand and engaged in an earth-shattering battle with God Eli. She's actually so powerful? Machina's body was trembling. The scope of the battle between the two master-level powerhouses was constantly expanding. Holy light shot out in all directions, and black fog swirled wildly. The two extreme powers of light and darkness were engaged in a battle at the pinnacle. On the other side, the battle was not looking good. After the canopy of undead was dispelled by God Eli, the necromancers were completely exposed to the sunlight, and their threat was greatly reduced. They were barely able to hold on by relying on the countless skeletons they summoned. The newly formed Necromancer Legion was not strong, and many of them had not even been able to forge their own bone staff. A necromancer without a bone staff was like a warrior without a sword, and their combat power was limited. McKinney was, after all, a veteran of hundreds of battles. While God Eli was delaying the enemy masters, he took the opportunity to launch an all-out attack on Gloom City. The army rushed towards Gloom City like a tide. Although the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Expedition Army was said to be 500,000 strong, it was actually slightly more than 400,000. Excluding the logistics and clerical personnel, there were less than 300,000 combat personnel. However, 300,000 troops were enough to crush the entire Ebian rebels. Juliana's expression was very ugly. She did not expect to start a street battle so soon. According to her plan, the canopy of undead was enough to stop the 500,000-strong army outside Gloom City. Just the priest of Guangming's dispel had changed the outcome of the battle. Although the canopy of undead still had some effect, its threat had been greatly reduced. Pass down the order, activate all the defenses in Gloom City. At the same time, prepare for street battle. Juliana gritted her teeth and gave the order. Yes, miss. Lachlan responded and rushed out. Gloom City, also known as Manchester, was the last line of defense for the Ebian rebels. If they lost it, everything would be lost. Kill, kill, kill. The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire poured into the city through the broken entrance. The citizens of Gloom City also raised their weapons to resist. Unlike these professional soldiers, the Ebia's citizens were not inferior in battle. Uncle Junger was a blacksmith. With a giant hammer in his hand, he swung a soldier of the Holy Roman Empire and smashed him into a meat patty on the ground. Catherine was as light as a swallow. She used the thief's stealth to shuttle through the crowd. Her dark gold dagger danced up and down, aiming for the vital points. The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire had already entered Gloom City. There were traces of fierce fighting on the city walls, houses, and roofs. The Holy Roman Empire had the advantage of strength and numbers, but Gloom City had the geographical advantage. For a while, both sides were in a deadlock. However, as the number of enemies increased, the balance of the battle began to tilt towards the Holy Roman Empire. In the corridors of Gloom City, countless corpses were piled up. Blood flowed everywhere, forming small puddles. Most of those who died were civilians of Gloom City. Although they fought with their lives, their strength was limited. On the other side, Vivian was at a disadvantage in the battle against God Eli. In terms of strength, Vivian was obviously inferior to God Eli. Vivian was an advanced Grand Magus Necromancer, but God Eli was already at the peak of the Great Guangming Priestess. After the baptism of the Holy See, she had a higher understanding of the Law of Light. She suppressed Vivian's necromancy magic completely. Moreover, God Eli had many knights guarding her. Although they were not a match for Vivian in a one-on-one battle, they could make her lose her focus when attacking God Eli together. After several hours of fighting, the Terror Knight was destroyed by God Eli's powerful attacks. It finally completed its historical mission and turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared into the air. It's finally done. This guy is really difficult to deal with. His defense and attack are both terrifyingly strong. God Eli retracted her holy flames and let out a sigh of relief. The strength of this undead creature had left a deep impression on her. She glanced at Vivian, and the murderous intent in her eyes intensified. These necromancers are really too scary. I will not allow any of them to live in this world. Shing! An arrow was shot out of nowhere and directly entered Vivian's body. Blood gushed out and dyed her necromancer robe red. Vivian finally couldn't hold on any longer and staggered to the ground. It was dangerous to sit on the battlefield. Vivian gritted her teeth and endured the pain, as she got up. However, she saw a two-handed staff in front of her. You lost. God Eli was expressionless. Teacher Vivian, do you have any last words? The outcome of this war has been decided. Although Amufus City has been destroyed, I have still achieved my strategic goal and obtained the final victory. Ahaha! McKinney stood on a high ground and quietly watched the fierce battle in the city. He laughed loudly. After returning to the Holy Roman Empire, perhaps he would have 2 more medals on his shoulders. Fire elements floating between heaven and earth, accept my call and burn my enemies. Fireball! Juliana shouted, and the fireball was shot out. Several Holy Roman Empire soldiers were burned to ashes. Even Juliana had participated in the battle. This showed that the situation was extremely grim. Undercity was in danger of being destroyed at any time. At this time, several Holy Roman Empire soldiers stealthily moved to Juliana's side and raised their butcher's knives at Juliana. Even if Juliana had the strength of an advanced master, if she was ambushed by a beginner swordsman at such a close distance, she would still die. Unfortunately, Juliana was completely focused on casting spells and didn't notice that these guys were stealthily approaching. Swish, swish, swish. Several cold lights flashed, and those guys who intended to ambush or had their throats pierced by Catherine's sharp dagger. They twitched and fell to the ground. At this time, Catherine took the opportunity to retreat to Juliana's side. Sister, Undercity has already been breached. Let's go. Catherine wiped the blood on her face and said, Go? Where can we go? Juliana was at a loss. Suddenly, she felt that her idea of withdrawing her forces and defending Manchester was stupid. Even if all the forces were combined, they wouldn't be a match for the Holy Roman Empire. The right thing to do was to give up Manchester and use the terrain advantage to fight guerrilla warfare with the Holy Roman Empire. Thinking of this, Juliana finally understood why the Roland Empire suddenly cut off the necessary reinforcements. They had the same idea. Pornographic novels, however, Manchester's position was extremely important. It was equivalent to the capital of the Ebian rebels. Could they give it up so easily? The answer was no. Therefore, this was a dilemma. Could it be that the kingdom of Ebia is really destined to be destroyed? Juliana raised her head and looked at the sky with tears in her eyes. At this moment, her heart was filled with despair. Do it. Vivian also knew that she was going to die. She was seriously injured and her soul force was exhausted. She no longer had the ability to resist, but her eyes still emitted a cold light. Ron will avenge me. Ron? Hearing this name, Godeli's heart was at a loss. Ron's face appeared in her mind. She and Ron knew each other when they were very young. The two of them had a fight. If she hadn't left the Balarax Academy, they might have become very good friends. However, now that God Eli had joined the Holy See, it was destined that the two of them would be mortal enemies without any reason. Perhaps it was because she remembered the past. A smile appeared on Godeli's face, but it was immediately replaced by a serious expression. Haha, you're counting on Ron to avenge you? God Eli laughed. She laughed very happily. Even if it's Ron, what can he do? Your necromancy was taught by him. Maybe he's stronger than you. However, I'm already at the peak of the master rank. My mentor told me that within 2 years at the latest, I'll definitely become a holy priest. At that time, let's see how your Ron will avenge you. Haha. The sacred flame in Godeli's hand burned fiercely, setting off her dignity and holiness. In front of her was a completely defenseless Vivian. Mentor Vivian, remember not to learn necromancy in your next life. If you oppose God Guangming, you're destined to have a bad end. After coldly saying this, God Eli fiercely swung the sacred flame in her hand. Suddenly, a green mass of air flew out of nowhere and attacked God Eli from behind with extreme speed. God Eli's reaction was extremely fast. She suddenly turned around and fiercely swung the sacred flame in her hand at the green mass of air. Thanks to the obstruction of the green mass of air, Vivian was fortunate enough to escape. Boom! The sacred flame in God Eli's hand and the green mass of air collided, exploding with a powerful impact. Under the burning of the sacred flame, the green mass of air was quickly reduced to ashes. Want to sneak attack me? No way. God Eli was somewhat pleased with herself. However, she didn't get to be pleased for long. When the sacred flame disappeared, the dissipated green mass of air suddenly shook and transformed again, turning into countless small green snakes that frantically coiled around her arm. It's a soul attack. God Eli's expression changed greatly. She fiercely raged, and the sacred flame erupted again, burning these small green snakes into ashes. What a sinister soul attack. What exactly is this thing that can actually attack the soul? Thinking of the previous scene, God Eli's heart still palpitated with fear. If she had been careless, she would have been overturned. Who's sneak attacking me? God Eli's heart was filled with hatred. She raised her eyes and looked all around, looking for traces of the sneak attacker. Suddenly, God Eli's heart twitched violently. This was because she felt that in the distant sky, a powerful aura that caused her heart to palpitate was rapidly approaching. Moreover, this aura carried a strong hostility, causing her to feel increasingly uneasy. In the sky, a small black dot appeared on the horizon, slowly growing larger and larger. What is that? McKinney quietly stared at the sky, a trace of unease flashing through his heart. That's... God Eli's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. Dragon. Ah, no, that's a dragon skeleton. God Eli cried out in alarm, her heart sinking. This was because she could already tell that the bone dragon was a powerful undead creature. When God Eli's gaze fell on the person standing on the bone dragon's back, her expression suddenly froze. Ron, 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 you're finally back. Vivian quietly stared at the sky and muttered. Suddenly, she covered her mouth, and tears of excitement flowed from her eyes. Ron, young Master Ron is back. Seeing this scene, the people in Gloom City all looked towards the sky, their faces filled with joy. Some of them had already started cheering. Ron's return meant that they were saved. Ron, you're finally back. Fortunately, you're just in time. Juliana's beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of spirit. Ron's appearance was like a ray of light, dispelling the haze in her heart. Even the sky had become clear. Chapter 551. Ron's appearance caused an uproar on the battlefield. The Ebian rebels were overjoyed, while the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire were terrified. A powerhouse from the sacred domain. Although they didn't see any similar creatures, McKinney knew that, judging from the powerful aura released from his body, this person was undoubtedly a powerhouse from the sacred domain. God Eli's eyes widened. Ron, sacred domain? Heavens! How could he have reached the sacred domain? It was no wonder that God Eli was inexplicably shocked. She was someone who had been baptized by the Holy See and blessed by the gods, and her understanding of the laws was far superior to ordinary people. However, she still hadn't reached the sacred domain. Ron, who was only a year older than her, had stepped into the sacred domain first. Fortunately, I made it in time. Even though Gloom City has fallen, my arrival can turn everything around. Ron's face was full of confidence. With a wave of his black robe, he slowly descended from the sky and came to Vivian's side. Young Master. Vivian took a step forward excitedly, but fell down softly. She hadn't been able to protect Undercity, and the Necromancer group that she had painstakingly invested in had also suffered some casualties. She didn't know how to explain this to Ron. It's nothing, Vivian. You've already done very well. Ron supported her and said with a smile. His twinkling eyes swept around, taking in everything around him. At this time, Ron's gaze fell on Saintess God Eli, and he was slightly stunned. You're God Eli? That's me, Ron. Long time no see. God Eli nodded indifferently, which was considered a greeting. Ron, this God Eli is no longer the God Eli of the past. Not only did she join the Holy See, she also went through baptism and became a priest. She has now become a complete charlatan, a madwoman. Vivian said anxiously. Shut up. God Eli couldn't take it anymore and yelled, Those who blaspheme against God will fall into hell. Only those who believe in God and respect God will be able to obtain eternal life. Oh. Ron's eyes narrowed slightly. He had heard that people who had been baptized by the church would become mentally unstable and would become paranoid all day long. It seemed that God Eli had already sunk into it. The fact that she had turned from a genius spellcaster to what she was now was very clear. Of course, not everyone in the Holy See could be baptized. If that were the case, there would be no heretics in the entire Holy Roman Empire. There were too many conditions required for the baptism, and it was difficult to enjoy such treatment unless one was a genius. Godeli was such a genius. Her family held an important position in the Holy Roman Empire. She had shown extraordinary magical talent at a young age and was chosen by the Holy See. After baptism, she successfully became a priest. The baptism of the Holy See was a comprehensive transformation from the body to the soul. On the body, the power of the light element would be greatly strengthened, and on the soul, a firm belief in God Guangming would be established. Godeli was undoubtedly in this situation. Ron, I didn't expect that your necromancy magic had already reached the sacred domain. To be honest, I am very surprised. This means that you are one step closer to the devil, one step further from the great God Guangming. You have been deeply poisoned, and only by sincerely atoning for your sins can you be forgiven by God Guangming, because the benevolent God will forgive you for the mistakes you have made. Come, Ron, don't hesitate anymore, don't be afraid anymore. Convert to the embrace of God Guangming, and the holy power will wash away the filth in your heart. Only then will the imprisoned soul be redeemed. Godeli was eloquent when she spoke. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been intimidated by her. Ron smiled and waved his hand. I don't care about God Guangming or not. Godeli, if you don't want to die here, then go back obediently. Seeing that we were once classmates, I will let you go. But next time, there won't be such a chance. Ron said with a solemn expression. Stubborn and stubborn. Godeli's eyes flashed. Those who offend God Guangming will not have a good ending. Idiot. Ron rolled his eyes at Godeli. He decided to ignore this lunatic who had been brainwashed by the Holy See. He still had a more important mission to complete. With a slight lift of his black robe, a white bone staff appeared in Ron's hand at some point in time. His body slowly rose, and wisps of black gas continued to coil around his body. Countless forces passed through the bone staff and poured directly to the ground. With my heart, with my name, I turn into a natural disaster and destroy all things. Ron raised the dragon bone staff high, and the light of the holy weapon kept flashing. His eyes turned a deep green. Ka-ka-ka, a crisp sound rang out. Strange movements appeared on the ground, as if thousands of creatures were gnawing at it. On the ground beneath Ron, a ball of black mist slowly expanded. Wherever it went, the flowers and plants withered, and the ordinary soil began to harden, forming balls of black hard blocks. In the soil, a trace of green and pale white seeped out. What is this? Ah, not good. The black fog is floating over. Look, the ground is starting to condense. Whether it was the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire or the Ebian rebels, they were all discussing. They were all deeply afraid of Ron's power at this moment. The black fog continued to spread, like a terrifying fog seeping out of hell. Wherever it went, the ground would turn black. At this moment, Ron was like a god descending to the mortal world. His body was trembling, and the dragon bone staff kept shaking, emitting a humming sound. His soul force was frantically circulating, and his sea of consciousness was constantly surging. The smell in the air was very oppressive, as if the whole space had been sealed. His aura kept rising. What is he doing? Godeli had a bad feeling. At this moment, she truly felt fear from the bottom of her heart. It was fear towards Ron's power. She never thought that a necromancer from the sacred domain would be so powerful. Forbidden spell. Ron is going to cast a forbidden spell. Juliana turned pale with fright. Quick, hide. Be careful of being affected. Not good. Machina's expression changed. The power emitted from Ron's body was too strong, and even the surrounding space was affected. Quick, attack him, don't continue. Although Machina wasn't familiar with the power of a necromancer, at this moment, all the signs indicated that a forbidden spell was about to be cast. Kill! Under Machina's command, countless magic balls and crossbow bolts were shot towards Ron. Unfortunately, these magic beasts and crossbow bolts were like water entering the sea, quickly disappearing without a trace. The black fog had finally finished spreading. Ron raised his head slightly, and a breeze blew past, blowing the hair in front of his forehead. His eyes were green, and he looked like a demon from the depths of hell. Powerful, evil, terrifying, and suffocating. Hee, an army of 500,000 might seem like a lot, but in my eyes, it's nothing much. Necromancers like us are least afraid of being surrounded. After Ron coldly said this, his eyes shone brightly. Go. Destroy everything. Necromancer calamity. Boom! The black fog on Ron's body suddenly dispersed, and a gale blew across the battlefield. Wherever the gale blew, the ground suddenly changed. It was as if something had awoken from a 10,000-year-long slumber. At this moment, the hardened ground began to stir, and the disturbance grew bigger and bigger. What is this? Be careful, something is coming out. Oh my God, it's a skeleton. Alarmed cries came from the crowd. At this moment, undead creatures scrambled to crawl out from the hardened ground. On the hillside, in the city, beside the moat, as long as the ground was hardened, disgusting skeletons would crawl out. These fellows that had been blessed with the plague emitted a green light and held all kinds of weapons in their hands. There were swords, giant axes, and magic staffs. Without exception, there was a faint green light in their eyes, as if they were about to devour someone. Countless undead creatures were summoned all over the mountains and plains at once. The terrifying number of them was shocking. Necromancer calamity. This was a forbidden spell of necromancy, a one-time obscene novel. The amount of undead creatures summoned was shocking. Not only were the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire shocked, even the necromancers of the Scourge Church were shocked. They had never thought that necromancy magic could be so powerful. Heavens! Is this the strength of a grand magus necromancer? So strong. Too strong. With such powerful necromancy magic, it's enough to crush all opponents. Its power is even more terrifying than a forbidden spell. Paige muttered, his body trembling from excitement. Yes, the young master is too strong. Just with this move, no one in the entire Noah continent is a match for him. The young master is mighty. Although their bodies were riddled with wounds, the eyes of the necromancers sparkled with excitement. For the first time, they felt proud of the necromancy magic they had learned. Kill. McKinney took a deep breath, and a trace of coldness flashed through his eyes. He was a person who killed without hesitation. Under his command, the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire began to fight with the skeletons summoned by Ron. Boom, 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 the battle intensified once again. At this time, the skeletons summoned by Ron also began to counterattack. The number of skeletons was densely packed, and it was terrifying. The battlefield became lively once again. No, that's not right. Ron's actions could be hidden from others, but not from Vivian. She was the strongest necromancer apart from Ron, and she quickly saw that something was wrong. Although the number of skeletons is considerable, their strength is too weak. Moreover, there aren't any other undead creatures apart from the skeletons. There isn't even a single powerful Dark Knight. Numbers alone are useless. Chapter 552. Just as Vivian was worried, although there were a lot of skeletons, none of them were high-level undead creatures. The skeletons were quickly exterminated and disappeared into thin air. Don't be afraid. These skeletons are too weak. I can kill quite a few of them myself. A soldier laughed as he chopped off the head of a skeleton warrior. His do-chi was powerful, and the skeletons around him were turned into ashes by his attack. Ancient necromancy magic isn't that great. Kill, kill, kill. On the battlefield, countless skeletons turned into black smoke and disappeared. Although the skeletons were not afraid of death, their inferior fighting strength was still a huge hindrance. The Holy See's southern punitive army frantically counterattacked and gained the upper hand for a moment. Necromancy Calamity was a necromancy sacred magus ability. It summoned a large number of skeletons to do battle, and its power was comparable to a forbidden spell. Moreover, this necromancy magic consumed an enormous amount of soul energy. However, the skeletons summoned with the same amount of soul energy were of limited use. The reason was simple. The soul energy of a Black Knight could summon 1,000 skeleton warriors and 100 skeleton warriors. In a situation where numbers were considered, their fighting strength could not be guaranteed. This is a necromancer with the strength of the sacred domain. It's only SOSO. After the initial shock, McKinty's face finally calmed down. Seeing the situation begin to turn around, a smile appeared on his face. Although you are a powerhouse of the sacred domain, you alone cannot change the fate of the Abia rebels. Hee. Is it only SOSO? Ron smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth curling up. If it's only SOSO, I am not worthy to be called a necromancy sacred magus. Now, I'll let you see the true terror of necromancy magic after cultivating to the sacred domain, bloodthirsty berserk. In the sky, Ron waved the dragonbone staff in his hand, and a dark red circle of light spread out from his body. It was like a stone being thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples. At this time, the aura of the skeletons suddenly changed and became even more fierce. Their green eyes turned crimson red, as if they were devils from hell. Their damaged bodies quickly recovered and were as good as new. Roar! The skeletons that cover the mountains and plains howled in unison. It was a howl that came from the depths of hell. Then, these skeletons howled and pounced on the enemy like hungry wolves that had encountered their prey. What's going on? The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire were stunned. They felt that these skeletons had undergone a huge change. It was as if they had gone crazy, attacking without any regard for their lives. Moreover, these skeletons had clearly become faster, stronger, more violent, and more bloodthirsty. Pornographic novels, of course, the strength of a single skeleton was nothing, but when hundreds of thousands of skeletons went berserk at the same time, their combat strength would increase by 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The skeletons didn't defend at all. They only knew how to attack again and again. The skeleton warrior with the heavy shield had thrown his shield to the side at some point and was waving his huge axe at the soldiers. The skeleton warrior that had been cut in two desperately crawled forward with his hands and bit at the soldier's boots with his sharp teeth. These skeletons seemed to have been bestowed with life. They used their burning fighting spirit to recall their last glory before death. At this moment, they were warriors. Finally, the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire couldn't hold on any longer. The army of 500,000 retreated under the attacks of the berserk skeletons, leaving behind a ground full of corpses. Don't come over. The soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire looked at the rows of skeletons in front of them and retreated in fear. In their eyes, these skeletons were even more terrifying than the demons from hell. They were crazy, bloodthirsty, and fearless of death. Their bodies also carried the plague virus. Once their wounds were infected, they would become weak and would be cut into pieces by the berserk skeletons. How could this be? How could this be? McKinney's eyes were filled with shock. He didn't think that defeat would come so quickly. Ron, with just his strength alone, had turned the situation of the entire battlefield around. The terrifying skeletons were displaying their final madness. Amazing, too amazing. Ron, you really didn't disappoint me. Juliana's beautiful eyes flashed, her eyes filled with amazement. She took a deep breath and gave the order, launch an all-out counterattack. Destroy the enemy at all costs. Yes. Lachlan heavily pressed his chest and saluted. At this moment, he truly experienced the power of a necromancer and was completely convinced of Ron's strength. Ka. Godally's teeth were chattering, producing a crisp sound. Watching the battle from such a close distance, she truly felt the power of Ron and the terror of necromancy magic. This was different from any power of the Noah continent. It was powerful, terrifying, and filled with a strange aura. This was a terrifying power from another plane, coming from the depths of hell. Demons. Seeing the skeletons slaughtering the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire, Godally's eyes turned red. She clenched her fists tightly, her delicate body trembling. She didn't make a move, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't dare. Ron was too powerful, so powerful that it made her despair. Perhaps only His Majesty Pope could deal with him. At this moment, Godally felt a wave of powerlessness in her heart. Ron stood in the sky, continuously casting spells. He waved his staff wildly, as if dancing, and a vast amount of soul power poured down like mercury. Godally quietly looked at Ron in the sky, her heart thumping. Like any other magic profession, A necromancer was the weakest in the process of casting spells. This was a great opportunity for a sneak attack. Thinking of a sneak attack, Godeli hesitated. Her dignity as a noble and her devout faith didn't allow her to do so. I don't care anymore. I must kill this demon. Thinking of this, Godeli clenched her teeth. Her trembling hand raised her staff high, and she chanted in a low voice, Almighty God, you have descended upon the world. Your radiance is incomparably dazzling. Facing the evil existence of the world, your body turns into lightning, purifying all darkness. Godeli raised her staff high, and a ball of light slowly condensed at the tip of the staff. Her priest robe fluttered without wind, and her body slightly left the ground, gently floating. Ron didn't seem to notice this at all. He was concentrating on casting spells, and red halos were spreading from his body. Ron, be careful. At this moment, Vivian, who was on the ground, suddenly noticed Godeli's strange behavior. She turned her head to look and was shocked. She threw herself at Godeli without a care for her own safety. Stop! But it was too late. Godeli's magic had already finished condensing. A faint smile of victory appeared on her face, and her eyes shone brightly. Ron, take your sins with you and go to hell. Holy impact! A pillar of light soared into the sky, fiercely blasting towards Ron at an extremely fast speed. Vivian couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. Boom! The beam of light fiercely struck Ron in the sky. In the air, a ball of light rapidly expanded, and a dazzling light shot out in all directions. It was as bright as the sun, overshadowing everything in the surroundings. One could only imagine how powerful the power contained in the light pillar was. No one would have thought that Vivian would suddenly launch a sneak attack. Her strength as a master was not inferior to Ron's at all. Ron. Vivian immediately collapsed to the ground. No one knew better than her how weak a necromancer's body was. Even a necromancer grand Magus body couldn't compare to a normal warrior's. Ron. Juliana paled and shouted. Seeing that Ron had been ambushed, her heart sank. This was the most crucial moment. Good. McKinney also saw this scene, and he rubbed his hands in excitement. Godeli's sneak attack was very timely and interrupted Ron's casting. He could clearly see that those berserk skeletons were beginning to calm down, and the red light on their bodies also disappeared. Phew, I finally succeeded. Godeli breathed a sigh of relief. She had used the little bit of camaraderie Ron had with her as a classmate to divert his attention and successfully launched a sneak attack, even though this kind of action was somewhat shameless. In order to eliminate the sins of the world, bless God, he will definitely forgive me, Godeli prayed in a low voice. At this time, she raised her head and looked towards the sky. Suddenly, Godeli's expression changed, and her eyes opened wide. How is this possible? In the sky, the radiance of the holy impact gradually dissipated, and a black figure slowly appeared. Ron's black robe slightly fluttered in the sky, and in front of him, a huge white jade shield appeared, protecting his small body. Everyone was stunned. Godeli's heart sank to the bottom of the valley, while Abia's eyes were filled with joy. Ron quietly sized up Godeli, whose body was constantly trembling inside his heart. A good girl had been brainwashed by the holy sea to this extent, and he didn't know whether it was pitiful or sad. At this moment, Ron's hatred towards the holy sea grew even more. Godeli, you and I were schoolmates, and we served different masters on the battlefield. I had no choice but to spare your life, did you think? I wouldn't be on guard against you. You devil, kill me if you have the guts. God Guangming won't forgive you. Godeli's almond eyes widened, and she shouted. Stubborn. Ron shook his head and sighed slightly. You only have one chance. Godeli, if you don't cherish your life, I have nothing to say. White bone spear. After saying that, Ron didn't even listen to him chant, and with a wave of his hand, a white bone spear flew towards him. Holy shield. Godeli clenched her teeth and summoned the holy shield, and a few transparent shields suddenly appeared out of thin air, protecting her body. Boom! The white bone spear exploded, and Godeli felt a heavy blow on her body, and the holy shield was shattered. How can this be? How can he be so strong? Godeli's body was trembling, and a trace of blood quietly flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Only now did she understand that the gap between her and Ron was hopeless. Godeli was already scared out of her wits by Ron, and she turned around to flee. "Ron, don't let her escape," Vivian shouted. "Don't worry, she can't escape." Ron's voice seemed to come from the horizon, and with a light wave of his hand, an extremely tyrannical aura was released. Frost Nova. Godeli's body froze, and she felt an extremely cold aura firmly wrap around her, and she couldn't move even half a step. Not good. Godeli's heart sank. Boom! Countless pieces of ice shattered, and Godeli's body suffered a heavy blow, and she fell heavily to the ground. The blood that flowed out dyed her pure white priest robe red. Everyone was stupefied. No one would have thought that the high and mighty Saintess would be like a little chick in front of Ron, and her defenses would be so easily broken through. Godeli's hair was disheveled, and she no longer had the glorious image of a saintess. She turned her head and looked at Ron with a hateful gaze. Ron, you're so ruthless. You brought this upon yourself." Ron's face was calm from beginning to end. "I gave you a chance to escape, but unfortunately, you didn't cherish it. Now, since that's the case, I'll send you to the heaven recorded in your holy sea's holy Bible." After saying this, Ron once again raised his dragon bone staff. At this time, Godeli hysterically shouted, "Ron, I definitely won't let you off. I definitely won't." As soon as her voice fell, Godeli took out an item from her body and casually tore it. Not good. She's trying to escape. Ron looked, and his body shook. At this time, he saw an exquisite return scroll in Godeli's hand. At this time, it was already too late for Ron to stop her. A spatial barrier had already formed, enveloping Godeli within. "Ha ha ha! Ron, today's humiliation. I'll make you pay 100-fold in the future. The day I become a priest will be the day you die. Ron, wash your neck and wait." Chapter 553. Godeli had escaped. She had abandoned the 500,000 soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire and fled. As the representative of the Holy See, her actions were dereliction of duty. What a pity she still managed to escape. Ron sighed, his heart filled with regret. This time, he really did not do it on purpose. No one would have thought that Godeli would have a return scroll. "Now it's your turn." Ron's gaze focused, his eyes shining brightly. Like the commander of an army, he led the Skeleton Empire to launch a counterattack. "Those bastards are coming again. Quickly block them. We can't block them anymore. Let's escape." The Saintess had escaped, and the morale of the Holy Roman Empire soldiers had plummeted. They had lost their will to fight, and with a single clash, they were forced to retreat. "Chase them. Kill these dogs of the Holy Roman Empire." How could Juliana let go of this opportunity? She commanded the Ebian rebels to launch a frenzied counterattack against the Holy Roman Empire's army. Dressed in all kinds of clothing, the Ebian rebels and armed civilians rushed out from the hidden tunnels of Gloom City, joining the army that was pursuing them. The necromancers of the Scourge Church gathered together and summoned a large number of undead creatures. Together with Ron's skeleton army, they formed a mighty flood of bones that swept towards the Holy See's southern punitive army. The Holy Roman Empire's army began to collapse. They threw away their armor and fled for their lives, ignoring the orders of their superiors. First, it was the vanguard, then the left and right wings, and finally the middle army. The middle army was directly under McKinney's control and was loyal to the Marshal. As one of the elite armies of the Holy Roman Empire, they rose up in resistance. Unfortunately, in the face of this powerful flood of bones, any resistance was futile. "Stop! All of you stop. You have thrown away the face of the Holy Roman Empire." McKinney was flustered and exasperated. He raised his sword and ruthlessly cut down a few soldiers who were escaping, but it was useless. There were too many people running away. In the face of absolute power, normal people would not have the heart to resist. "Lord Marshal, let's run." At this moment, one of McKinney's personal bodyguards pulled him back and sobbed. "We've lost. It'll be too late if we don't run now." Defeated? I didn't lose. Who said I lost? Faced with the predicament of failure, McKinney began to lose his sanity. His face was filled with madness as he glared at the soldier and roared, "You're messing with the morale of the army. You deserve to die 1,000 times over. Men, drag him out and kill him." The McKinney guards looked at each other, but no one made a move. In such a chaotic situation, orders were no longer of any use. "What? You dare to openly disobey orders? Do you want to be court-martialed?" Machina was so angry that he started shouting, "I'll say it again. Drag this guy out and kill him immediately." Right now, the guard still didn't make a move. That personal bodyguard who was about to be killed by Machine gritted his teeth. "Marshall has gone mad. Men, take Marshall away." Just as the guard finished speaking, a few soldiers came forward and carried Machina away. "Let me go, I'm not mad. I'm the Grand Marshal of the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Expedition Army. You have no right to touch me." Machina struggled as he was forcefully taken away. Kill, kill, kill. After a great battle, corpses were strewn everywhere. The Holy Roman Empire's soldiers who couldn't fight were even killed by Ebia's armed civilians. Ron's body landed on the ground. At this moment, Juliana and the rest had already come forward to greet him. She bowed. "Thank you to the Scourge Church's young master and all the necromancers for helping us win this battle. The existence of the Ebia royal family depends on your support." "You flatter me. We merely supported each other." Ron smiled and waved his hand. Juliana sighed in her heart. It seemed that accepting Ron's harsh conditions was a wise decision. Without Ron, the revival of Ebia would have been impossible, and it might even have been destroyed today. But now, Juliana saw hope, the hope of reviving her country. "Young master, now that Gloom City is safe, what's the next step of the plan?" Juliana asked. Her tone was unprecedentedly polite, representing the attitude of the Ebian rebels. Like everyone else, after seeing Ron's unstoppable strength, she was truly convinced. I've never been good at war." Ron smiled. "Juliana, I'll leave these matters to you." "Okay, young master, then I'll boldly issue the order." Juliana nodded. She waved her hand to call for a messenger and issued a series of orders. "Pass down the order. Order the Ebia cavalry to attack with all their might. Try to annihilate the enemy as much as possible. Pass down the order. Notify the hidden forces in Ebia's major cities to revolt as soon as possible and drive away the armed forces of the Holy Roman Empire in Ebia. Pass down the order. Order the armed civilians in Gloom City to retreat and recuperate. At the same time, repair Gloom City as soon as possible and count the spoils of war." Juliana issued one order after another. She had a clear mind and an active mind. She was good at formulating detailed plans and executing them well. After a while, the Ebia cavalry under Lachlan's leadership rushed out and chased after the defeated troops of the Holy Roman Empire. After completing all this, Juliana once again returned to Ron's side and said with a smile, "Young master, thank you for your generous and selfless help. After this battle, with your illustrious reputation, you'll definitely shock the entire continent. I think even the Holy Roman Empire won't dare to invade." Juliana excitedly rubbed her hands. "Under your protection, we'll definitely be able to give the uprising forces in Ebia sufficient confidence. I'll let them gather together and clear out the forces of the Holy Roman Empire. At that time, you'll see the rise of a brand new kingdom of Ebia." Catherine, why aren't you thanking the young master?" Juliana glanced at Ron and knew that Ron still had some misunderstandings with her. She rolled her eyes and dragged her sister to the front of the stage. Kai pornographic novel Serene was currently standing beside her sister. Being called by her sister, she could only helplessly say, "Young master, thank you for your selfless help. Ha ha." Ron smiled faintly. With his back facing them, he lightly played with the soul ring on his finger and laughed. The cooperation between the Scourge Church and the Ebian rebels is mutually beneficial. There's no need to thank me. I'm just doing what I should do. At this point, Ron paused. He turned around and looked at Juliana and smiled. Actually, I'm not too willing to see the existence of a kingdom of Ebia. What? Juliana and Catherine were shocked when they heard this. The two sisters looked at each other, their eyes filled with fear. What did Ron mean? Could it be that he's going back on his word? If that was the case, things would be difficult. Ron had the strength of the sacred domain. He could subvert the entire Abia in an instant. Under the might of the sacred domain, no one would be his match. Young master, you mean? Hearing Ron's words, Juliana's mind went blank. The fear on her face became even stronger. She, who was usually eloquent, could not even speak properly now. Haha. Seeing that they were frightened enough, Ron laughed. He turned around and looked at the two sisters playfully. What I mean is, compared to the kingdom of Abia, I would much rather see a powerful Abia empire standing tall in the south of the Noah continent. Huff. Huff. McKinney was panting heavily as he ran among the trees. Tree branches had scratched his face, making it look like he was dripping with blood. The heavy armor on his body was gone, and his luxurious robes had been torn into strips. He was in a sorry state. After being chased for 3 days and 3 nights, he ran north for his life. The army had already run out of food. Even as the marshal of the Empire's southern expedition, he did not have much food. Behind them, tens of thousands of Abia soldiers were chasing after them. His warhorse was dead, his personal guard were dead, and he was the only one left. Quick, don't let him escape. That guy's clothes are gorgeous. He must be an important figure in the Holy Roman Empire's army. We must catch him. Go back and report to Miss. He shouldn't have run far. Search the surroundings carefully. Don't leave any blind spots. The shouts of the Abia soldiers rang in his ears. McKinney was crouched by the river, half of his body submerged in the water. He did not dare to move. After being chased by the Ebian rebels for the past few days, McKinney was already exhausted. However, he still had a belief in his heart. As long as he returned to the Holy Roman Empire, everything would be saved. He did not even think about how he would explain the loss of Emperor Charlie's 500,000 soldiers. The commander of the cavalry regiment was Lachlan. He was one of the few experts among the Ebian rebels. He was also Miss Juliana's right-hand man. He was currently on his horse, carefully observing the surroundings. Reporting to my lord, there are bloodstains ahead. At this moment, an Ebian rebel soldier reported. Let's go and take a look. Lachlan's eyes darted around. He did not want to let go of any clues. On a thick tree trunk, there was a dazzling amount of blood. A piece of cloth was hanging from a tree branch, fluttering in the wind. It was obvious that an injured person had been here. Lachlan touched the bloodstains with his hand and sniffed them. He shouted, "The blood is still warm." He didn't go far. "Immediately go to the village and bring a dog here," an Ebian rebel soldier said. Soon, the dog was brought over. The dog sniffed the bloodstains and suddenly barked in the direction of the river. "I've been discovered." McKinney was shocked. He had hidden in an extremely good position. Even if the Ebian rebels came, they would not be able to discover him. However, he did not expect that his plan would be ruined by a dog. Quickly run. McKinney's body shot up like an arrow, jumping high out of the water and running for his life. It's him. Don't let him escape. Quickly chase him. Lachlan pointed in the direction that McKinney had escaped and said. The cavalry chased after him like the wind. Soon, they captured the tired, hungry, and weak McKinney. Lachlan walked in front of Melchin and with a swish took out a painting. He examined it carefully on Melchin's face and smiled. Sure enough, you're the marshal of the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Expedition Army, Lord McKinney. Brothers, we have caught a big fish, long live. The Ebian rebels raised their swords and cheered. I protest. McKinney struggled to stand up, but was firmly held down by a few Ebian rebels. I am a member of the Holy Roman Empire's royal family. I request to be treated like a noble. The so-called treatment of a noble was that after being captured, they could pay a certain amount of money in exchange for their freedom. At the same time, during the process of being captured, they would not be abused. Chapter 554. Undercity, in a quiet room in the city lord's mansion. Vivian was lying on the bed with her eyes closed. Her face was pale, and her breathing was so soft that it was almost inaudible. On the battlefield, when she was fighting with Godoli, she had accidentally been ambushed by a crossbow arrow, even though the arrow had already been drawn. Although the crossbow had been pulled out, the wound had not healed, and blood was still oozing out from the wound. The crossbow arrow was very lethal and had hit a vital point. If it had been slightly off, Vivian might have died. Vivian, are you okay? Ron quickly walked into the quiet room to see Vivian, who was injured in the battle. Hearing Ron's footsteps, Vivian gently opened her eyes, groaned, and tried to sit up. Don't move. Sit properly. Ron reached out and gently pressed Vivian down. He carefully examined Vivian's injury and frowned. What's wrong? Her injury hasn't healed yet. Her injury is very serious. Catherine gasped and said, I'm afraid such an injury can't be healed in a short time. I think it's best to let a priest treat her. What about a priest? Ron nodded and asked. Paige and Lisa, who had come in with Ron, looked at Vivian with concern. Lisa was even more nervous as she grabbed Vivian's hand. No one was more concerned about their mentor's injury than them. The Ebian rebels also had priests, but they were few in number. These professions that could heal injuries were treasures everywhere. Catherine replied, He's not here. I'll go and ask him to come over now. No need. Ron shook his head and smiled. I have a priest with me. A priest with you. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. A priest could be brought around? Ron did not answer. A light flashed at his waist, and not long after, zombie Aryan jumped out of the space bag. His face was pale, his eyes were closed, and his body was stiff. There was no trace of life. He was clearly a corpse. This is a corpse? Paige, Lisa, and the others opened their eyes wide and looked curiously at zombie Aryan. As necromancers, they were naturally not afraid of corpses, but they did not understand why Ron took out a corpse. Catherine understood. Ron had taken out such a thing when they were in Colored Stone Castle. Watch carefully. Ron smiled and did not explain further. He issued an order to zombie Aryan. Then, a scene that shocked everyone happened. The corpse suddenly seemed to come to life. He opened his eyes like a dead fish and slowly raised his hand. He moved. Paige and Lisa looked on, their eyes full of surprise. Unlike Catherine, this was the first time they saw Ron controlling a corpse. Zombie Aryan opened his 5 fingers like a chicken's claw, and a trace of white light condensed and kept rotating in his palm. Not long after, a burst of holy white light shone on Vivian. The light was so dazzling that it lit up the whole room. The wounds on Vivian's body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Healing. This was a priest's unique skill. It was used for first aid. In theory, even if a person was on the verge of death, they could be saved. Is he healing? Oh my God, a corpse can heal? Paige and Sharon were stunned. At this time, Lisa's eyes shone with a trace of joy. Young master, what kind of magic is this? It can make a corpse perform healing? This is the art of corpse control. Refining zombies is also one of them. Not only can he perform healing, but he can also fight. But this corpse's strength is a little weak. The strength of a corpse is related to its strength when it was alive. Paige asked. He felt that Ron's words had opened up a new palace for him. Of course. Ron smiled. He looked at Lisa, winked, and said, Do you want to learn? I'll teach you. I want to learn. Lisa cheered. There was nothing more interesting than learning necromancy. What an interesting little guy. Ron had a smile on his face. Like Vivian, he had high hopes for Lisa and Paige. The two were young. One was an advanced necromancer, and the other was a beginner necromancer. They were both very talented. Ron hoped to pass down all the necromancy he had learned. Perhaps in the near future, the Scourge Church could produce 1 or 2 more sacred necromancers. When that time came, the Scourge Church would be far more powerful. The number of sacred domain powerhouses determined the size of the power. If the Scourge Church had enough sacred domain powerhouses, he could even directly challenge the Holy See. Vivian closed her eyes and enjoyed the priest's healing. Suddenly, her face changed as if she had seen something terrible. She let out a scream. Ah! Vivian rolled on the bed in pain. Stop! Ron was shocked and immediately asked Aryan to stop. What's wrong? Vivian, what's wrong with you? Vivian calmed down. Looking at Aryan, a trace of fear flashed in her eyes. This guy's power. It seems to be restraining me. My injury isn't getting better, it's getting worse. Just as Vivian had said, the wound that had almost healed opened up again. Blood kept flowing out, and it was obviously more serious than before. Ron was shocked. How could this be? I don't know. Vivian said helplessly. Ron calmed down. He carefully observed Arian and understood the reason. It turned out that Vivian's necromancy was a type of dark power. It conflicted with Arian's Guangming power. Guangming power and dark power were natural enemies. When the two powers came together, it would be strange if they didn't fight. When a practitioner of the power of darkness was injured and used the power of light to heal, the negative effects would be revealed. In the past, Ron was weak and the conflict was not too obvious. But now that Vivian was a necromancer grand magus, Arian's use of the healing technique on her was like attacking her. Not only Vivian, but even Ron was the same. Now, Ron's whole body was filled with a dark and evil aura. Although Arian's healing could not hurt him, it was impossible for it to heal his injuries. After knowing the reason, Ron was helpless. The only thing he could do now was to wait for Vivian to slowly recover. Although her injury was serious, it was not to the extent of death. But it was inevitable that she would lie in bed for 10 days to half a month. After exhorting Vivian to rest in peace, Ron walked out of the room. Send people to take good care of her. Give her whatever she wants. Make sure she recovers quickly. Ron stood outside the door and said seriously to Catherine, I will. Catherine nodded heavily. She nodded. Lady Vivian is a meritorious servant of Abia. I will send people to take good care of her. Ron left, but his mood did not relax in the slightest. Vivian's injury had cast a shadow over his heart. The most troublesome thing was that her injury could not be healed. It could not be healed. This meant that if she was injured in the future, she could only recuperate in bed and use the human body's recovery ability to slowly recover. This was not good news for Ron. His luck was good this time. Vivian was lucky enough to survive on the battlefield. But what about the next time? It must be known that on the battlefield, the first aid of a priest was very important. Perhaps a minute delay could result in the separation of life and death. Moreover, there were many people in the necromancer group who were injured. What about the treatment in the future? Damn it, how exactly did Lord Noah treat my injury? If only I knew the method. Ron thought of the time when he was on Dragon Island. He was seriously injured and his whole body was in pieces. After he was rescued by Noah, he miraculously recovered. He wanted to know how Lord Noah treated him. Could it be that in the Scourged Church 100,000 years ago, if a necromancer was injured, would they have some method to treat their injuries? A question mark appeared in Ron's mind. When Grandpa Homelin comes back, I have to ask him properly. Ron thought in his heart, Young Lord, Your Highness. At this time, an Abia soldier ran in front of Ron. Facing this big shot of the Scourged Church, he looked somewhat nervous and stammered. Young Miss asked me to look for you. She has something important to discuss with you. Okay, Ron nodded. After pondering for a moment, he said, Help me tell her that I'm waiting for her in the study. Yes, young Lord, Your Highness. The Abia soldier bowed and said, Wait. Ron stopped the soldier. After thinking for a moment, he said, Forget it. I'll go look for her. Where is she? In the conference room in the underground of Undercity. Juliana's conference room was located in the underground of Undercity. It was surrounded by hard rocks and was very hidden. This was also the command room of the Ebian rebels in Manchester. After passing through a secret door, Ron arrived in the conference room. Upon seeing Ron, Juliana's eyes lit up. Young Lord, Your Highness, you came at the right time. We were just about to discuss with you. Just call me Ron. Ron smiled and nodded. After greeting everyone, some of the generals immediately stood up and gave their seats to Ron. What did you call me here for? Ron asked. It's a big matter. Juliana glanced at Ron and cleared her throat. The Holy Roman Empire's 500,000 soldiers have been annihilated. Furthermore, Lachlan just sent news that the Marshal of the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Expedition Army, McKinney, has been captured by us. This has increased our chances of bargaining. Juliana said with a smile of exultation. I believe that the Holy Roman Empire will not be able to invade us in a short period of time. Furthermore, we have you, young Lord Ron, here. I don't think they will dare to act rashly. Chapter 555. The recovered Pompeii city was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was a lively scene. The wide main road in the city was clean and spotless. Both sides of the road were filled with commoners who came to watch the show. Fully armed Ebia soldiers stood guard around. These soldiers, without exception, were all wearing heavy armor and holding long spears. However, their lower body was wearing something like a skirt. This was the traditional attire of the Kingdom of Ebia. Today was the coronation ceremony of the new king of the Kingdom of Ebia. This meant that the Kingdom of Ebia, which had been destroyed for almost 20 years, had been re-established. To the people of Ebia who were in dire straits, this was undoubtedly a joyous occasion. Among the commoners who came to watch, the older ones were filled with excitement. Towards the Holy Roman Empire, they had always lacked a sense of identity. The younger ones, on the other hand, were mostly at a loss. To them, the Holy Roman Empire's Ebia province was something they were more familiar with. At the end of the main road in the city, there was a majestic platform. On the platform, the important figures of the Scourge Church and the Ebian rebels had all arrived. Ron sat upright, and beside him were Shea, Hera, Becerra, Rainey, and the rest. Vivian did not attend because she was not feeling well. Paige and Lisa stood below and sat in the VIP seats. Hera was the representative sent by the Kingdom of Moran and came to watch the ceremony. There were also a few people sitting in the VIP seats. One of them was the Kingdom of Doro's Princess Kadena. Another was the Roland Empire's special envoy Elpha, as well as Komodo's Prince Rum and Princess Manny. Speaking of which, they were all Ron's classmates at the Balarax Academy. Some of them even stayed in the same dormitory. Lachlan and the rest wore heavy armor and stood guard around. Ron's best friend, Fatty, and his wife, Karachi, were also present. Beside them was Fatty's father, the finance minister of the Kingdom of Ebia, Carlos. When Elpha saw Kadena, he was shocked and tried to curry favor with her. However, Kadena ignored him and started chatting with Manny. This made the special envoy of the Empire feel very awkward. The enthronement ceremony of the Kingdom of Ebia was only attended by the Moran Kingdom, the Doro Kingdom, and the Roland Empire. Ron was the prince of the Moran Kingdom, and he was also the guardian of the Doro Kingdom. As for the Roland Empire, it was the sworn enemy of the Holy Roman Empire. As long as it was something that could make the Holy Roman Empire unhappy, it would not miss it. As for the other countries, one reason was that they disdained to interact with a small country like the Kingdom of Ebia. Another reason was that they were afraid of the Holy See. In the human world, the Holy See was definitely at the peak of existence. Just the number of powerful beings in the sacred domain was more than the number of powerful beings in the Roland Empire. Of course, compared to the kingdom of magical beasts, the human world paled in comparison. In the kingdom of magical beasts, there were as many powerful beings as there were clouds. Who knew how many powerful beings there were in the sacred domain? It was very likely that the number of powerful beings in the sacred domain of a magical beast family was equivalent to the number of powerful beings in the sacred domain of an empire. Ron sat in the center. He was also one of the main characters today. For the enthronement ceremony of the new king, he needed to be crowned by the Scourge Church. The king of Ebia was the pinnacle of worldly power, and Ron was the young master of the Scourge Church, the spokesperson of the god of death in the human world. After the king of Ebia was crowned, it meant that he had received the recognition of the gods and could exercise worldly power. Ron's gaze inadvertently swept past Kadena and landed on Elpha beside her. His eyes flashed with a trace of shrewdness. He actually dares to take liberties with my woman? This brat is simply courting death. As if sensing Ron's murderous gaze, Elpha, who was harassing Kadena, shuddered and restrained his actions. At this moment, the cry of an eagle could be heard from the sky. What's that? Paige looked towards the sky and frowned. He instantly tensed up. It can't be an enemy, right? Paige had fought with the soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire before, so he was especially sensitive to the cry of an eagle. He thought that it was the Griffin Knight of the Holy Roman Empire. It shouldn't be. It doesn't look like one. Lisa, who was beside him, shook her head. Look, what's that? It's a huge, strange bird. Is it the Griffin Knight of the Holy Roman Empire? It's not a Griffin Knight, it's a hippogriff. Look, There's a person sitting on the back of that strange bird. It's an elf. It can't be, right? The legendary elf? The commoners of the kingdom of Ebia were discussing fervently. When they saw the elf, the atmosphere became lively. It's Aurora. Sister Aurora is here. Rainey cheered when she saw the person on the back of the hippogriff. She had left behind beautiful memories in the elf empire. It's an elf? Elfa was also stunned. In the Noah continent, the elves were considered a special race. They naturally disliked interacting with humans, but they were a powerful force that could not be ignored. Among the elves, there were many strong warriors. Every elf was a powerful cultivator. The appearance of the elves was definitely an accident of the Roman Empire. Elfa's eyes darted around. In his position, he was more concerned about how to establish a relationship with this ancient and mysterious empire. As soon as the hippogriff landed, Ron saw a familiar face. He stood up and lost his composure. Ron, Aurora. The two of them cheered and hugged each other tightly, causing everyone around them to be dumbfounded. Those who knew Shaya, Cardina, and others were still okay, but those who didn't know them had shocked expressions on their faces. Speaking of which, Paige swallowed his saliva with difficulty and looked at Lisa. Since when did young master know an elf? Also, they seemed to be lovers. Lisa said hesitantly. Aurora gently caressed Ron's tanned face, her eyes full of tenderness. Ron, you become thinner and stronger. You become prettier too, Ron replied while caressing Aurora. Aurora laughed like 100 flowers blooming together. She lightly hit Ron, glib tongue. The two talked for a while more before reluctantly parting. Aurora still had a sense of propriety. She was here to represent the Elven Empire, so she couldn't be rude. At this time, someone brought a chair and invited Aurora to sit down. Soon, there was a commotion in the distance. The new king is here. The king is here. As the bells on the necks of several warhorses rang in the distance, a noble and luxurious carriage appeared on the main road of Pompeii City. The back seat of the carriage was open, and a beautiful woman was sitting on it. She was wearing a white royal robe with a red cloak behind her, looking sacred and solemn. She had a smile on her face and constantly waved to the people on both sides. It's the king. Your Majesty. Long live your Majesty. Some of the older Abia civilians had already knelt down and shouted, Long live your Majesty, with tears streaming down their faces. Their expressions were full of excitement, while some of the younger civilians were puzzled and began to whisper and talk in low voices. The new king of Abia is actually a woman? Who is she? She is Her Royal Highness Princess Juliana, the daughter of the former king of Abia. She has inherited His Majesty's throne. I see. Then what's the matter with the Scourge Church? The Scourge Church is a religious organization of the Kingdom of Ebia. Their young master, Ron, is the guardian of the Kingdom of Ebia. What? The Kingdom of Ebia also has a guardian? That's great. We also have a guardian. From now on, we won't be bullied by other countries. Many Abia civilians were happy to see the arrival of Ron and the Scourge Church. The older ones naturally knew what it meant to have a guardian. It meant the end of the war, and that they would no longer have to live a life of wanderings and inferiority. Juliana waved her hands continuously as she looked at the Ebia civilians on both sides. She had a smile on her face, but her heart was filled with emotions. After nearly 20 years, Ebia had finally overthrown the cruel rule of the Holy Roman Empire and established a new kingdom. She remembered that 20 years ago, when she was 7 years old, she was brought by her father to escape from this city in a panic. They were chased by the experts sent by the Holy See. Along the way, there was a storm of blood. The masters of Ebia who were loyal to the royal family, as well as countless ordinary Ebia soldiers, used their blood and lives to pave a path of escape. Ever since Juliana's father died of illness, the Ebian rebels went from being in the light to being in the light. They formed the Dark Organization, then went from being in the dark to being in the light, and finally re-established the Kingdom of Ebia. After so many hardships, sweat, tears, and sorrow, the goal that she had been fighting for all this time had finally become a reality. How could she not be excited? Father, do you see this? In the carriage, Juliana's tears fell unknowingly. After 20 years, the kingdom of Ebbia has finally been re-established. Your daughter swears that she will lead the people of Ebbia to build a glorious and powerful kingdom of Ebbia. Juliana took a deep breath. A person's face appeared in her mind, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. Without this person, her dream would never have been realized. A kingdom without a guardian was destined to be a tragedy. The carriage stopped in front of the high platform. An Ebbia's servant in ceremonial attire was already waiting there. He walked forward, opened the door, and helped their queen, Her Majesty Juliana, out of the carriage. Juliana gently pressed on the servant's arm and smiled. She raised her head and looked at the high platform that was filled with stairs. On the high platform, she couldn't see the top at a glance. It was full of unfathomable mysteries. Juliana took a deep breath and flung the red cloak on her body. Then, under the gaze of all the citizens, she walked up the high platform step by step. Juliana walked very slowly, as if every step was carefully thought out. Step by step, she climbed up the platform. Finally, Juliana walked to the top of the high platform and waved her hand to greet the citizens below. "You're finally here." Unknowingly, Ron had already walked to Juliana's side. With his hands behind his back, he looked down. "How is it? Doesn't it feel a little different from here?" Juliana nodded. She had changed from a high and mighty princess to the young miss of an organization similar to the Bandit Group, and then to the new queen of Ebbia. Only she could understand the sweetness and bitterness of this. Looking at this man who was younger than her by a few years, but who knew how many times stronger, Juliana's heart trembled slightly. Without him, she wouldn't be here today. Juliana gently lifted her royal robe and bowed down. She knelt on one knee and pressed her right hand to her chest. "Great God of death, your believer Juliana swears to follow in your footsteps and spread your glory to every corner of the world. The new queen of the kingdom of Ebbia earnestly requests for your blessings." "The God of death blesses you." Ron smiled. He raised his hand and pressed it on Juliana's head. Then, Ron's soul energy continuously flowed into her body. Juliana felt a warm aura coming from her head. Her body began to warm up, and at the same time, her soul energy rapidly grew. Juliana was shocked. Not only was her soul energy strong, her strength was also rapidly increasing. The God of Death's blessing. Ron had used this. Through some special method, he had greatly strengthened Juliana's soul energy. With a strong soul, Juliana's elemental perception had become sharper. At the same time, her magic power had also increased greatly. Not long after, Ron finally smiled and let go of his hand. "Thank you, young master." Juliana's heart trembled. She knew that Ron had given her a precious gift. This gift had greatly benefited her. Ron smiled. "No need to thank me. This is a gift from the great God of Death to his loyal believer." At this time, a servant at the side brought up a tray. He was very careful, as if he was holding a treasure. Ron smiled and removed the velvet cloth on the tray, revealing the item inside. It was a crown made of dark gold. It was inlaid with pigeon egg-sized pearls and various precious stones. It was incomparably valuable. Ron carefully picked up the crown and placed it on Juliana's head. "The God of Death blesses you." With the crown on, the coronation ceremony was completed. From today onwards, Juliana was the new queen of Ebbia. She wielded supreme authority in the secular world. At this time, Juliana stood up. Wearing the crown, she once again waved to the commoners below. "Long live Her Majesty." The commoners cheered. Some of the old Ebbia citizens once again knelt down. "Citizens of the kingdom of Ebbia." Juliana cleared her throat and spoke emotionally. Her voice spread far and wide through magic. 20 years, 20 whole years. In order to resist the invasion of the Holy Roman Empire, the people of Ebbia have paid a huge price. Blood, sweat, and even lives. The Holy Roman Empire's Ebbia province is synonymous with humiliation for the people of Ebbia. From today onwards, it will become history. A powerful and wealthy kingdom of Ebbia stands in the south of the Noah continent. Long live Ebbia. Long live Her Majesty the King. The commoners excitedly cheered again. For a time, various hats flew in the sky, expressing the people's enthusiasm for Ebbia's independence. At this time, Her Majesty Juliana's impassioned voice sounded again. Chapter 556. Holy Roman Empire, Imperial Capital, St. Paulo. On top of a huge palace made of white jade, from time to time, one or two bell chimes could be heard. The bell chimes were melodious and spread in all directions. Within the luxurious palace hall, it was incomparably spacious. That huge pillar was so large that it would take dozens of people to wrap their arms around it. That colorful glass window shone light onto the ground. In front of the window, a huge cross was erected high up. Within the cross, there was a carving of an angel spreading its wings and about to fly. This was the center of Holy Empire's highest authority. Seated on the throne was a middle-aged man with a golden crown on his head, a red mage robe draped over his body, and a golden cane in his hand. He was the 27th Emperor of Holy Empire, Charles XXVI. Below him stood several dozen ministers. Every single one of them was a nobleman from Guizhou. However, apart from earning money and playing with women, these nobles didn't have much interest in state affairs. Some of them were already openly snoring. Charles XXVI was holding a battle report in his hand. His hand was trembling nonstop, and his beard was also lightly twitching. This was the battle report from the Holy Roman Empire's Southern Expedition. The Southern Expedition had been completely annihilated, and their commander McKinney had been captured. He had made a request to redeem himself. Who can tell me? Who can tell me what the F***CK is going on? Charles XXVI tried his best to suppress his anger and roared. Where are my 500,000 soldiers? Where is my brother Melchens? How could they be gone? Who the F***CK can tell me? His Majesty Charles XXVI cursed, which was a rare sight. With his upbringing, he shouldn't have done so. Seeing His Majesty angry, the ministers seemed to have woken up from a dream. However, these people looked at each other, and no one took the initiative to speak. The atmosphere in the palace was somewhat stifling. All of you are mute. Charles XXXI was furious. He suddenly stood up and threw the battle report in his hand. Who told me that 500,000 troops will be able to extinguish the rebels in Abia? Who said that the Holy Roman Empire's rule in Abia province would be restored? Speak up, all of you. What have I been paying you for? The majesty of the emperor was fully displayed. It was different from the bustling atmosphere before the expedition. Now, all the ministers didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The movement of 500,000 soldiers on the expedition was huge, and the amount of resources required was simply astronomical. This naturally became a fat piece of meat that all parties were fighting for. However, what Charlie XXVI didn't know was that a large portion of the Empire's gold coins had fallen into their pockets. At this moment, the battle report just happened to float to the feet of the military minister of the Imperium. However, the fat guy who looked like a pig pretended not to see it and turned his head away. The ministers were all very smart. No one wanted to provoke His Majesty when he was angry. However, the sharp-eyed Charles XXVI saw it. He snorted coldly and said, "Mallory, why don't you say it?" The minister named Mallory could not pretend not to see it now. He was the Minister of War, and the report had just floated to his feet. At this moment, Mallory saw the gloating gazes around him. He felt very helpless. He could only pick up the report and pretend to read it a few times. Your Majesty, this report is very clear. The reason why our Southern Expedition Army lost was because we neglected the most important situation. We didn't know that a powerful being from the sacred domain had appeared among the Abia rebels as their guardian, said the military minister, Mallory. A powerful being from the sacred domain? His Majesty Charles XXVI was shocked. Is it an orc? Or a magical beast from the sacred domain? No, he is a human. Mallory shook his head. As soon as that powerful being from the sacred domain appeared, he destroyed the city of Amufa on the border between the Imperium and Abia and burned the food there. Our army fought bravely without food, but in the end, we were defeated. Mallory's words were very emotional. He knew that this was the only way to minimize his responsibility. No matter where he was an official, the principles were the same. Achievements had to be seized, and responsibilities had to be cleared. The Holy Roman Empire did not have a powerful being from the sacred domain, because all the powerful beings from the sacred domain were in the Holy See. In order to better control the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy See stipulated that every powerful being from the sacred domain, or a genius who would become a powerful being from the sacred domain, would have to join the Holy See and accept the jurisdiction of the Holy See. This made Charles XXVI feel rather helpless. The Holy Roman Empire's southern expedition was, in essence, an administrative action of the empire. In name, the Holy See had sent people to supervise the war. Logically speaking, eliminating the disunited rebels in Euboea and restoring order in some places in Euboea should have been a sure thing. But unexpectedly, a powerful being from the sacred domain had appeared among the rebels in Euboea. Everything was reversed. Even Charles XXVI did not expect that a powerful being from the sacred domain could play such an important role in the war. Charles XXVI narrowed his eyes. Who is this powerful being from the sacred domain? What is his occupation? He actually dares to help the rebels in Euboea fight against us. Are they not afraid of the revenge of the Holy See? According to reliable sources, this is a newly promoted powerful being from the sacred domain. His name is Ron. He seems to be a necromancer. What? A necromancer? Charles XXVI exclaimed. Mallory, the necromancer, actually became a powerful being from the sacred domain and destroyed my Amorphous city? Are you still asleep? Mallory moved his mouth and was about to speak when an attendant hurriedly ran over. Not good, Your Majesty. There's another battle report from the front. The attendant opened the battle report and was about to present it when Charles XXVI waved his hand. Just say it over there. Yes, Your Majesty, the attendant responded. He stood in place and opened the battle report to read. When the detailed battle report was finished, everyone in the hall was stunned. What's a pornographic novel? Is that so? The Euboea province of the Holy Roman Empire actually established a country under the protection of the Scourge Church? Illegal, absolutely illegal. I can't allow such a thing to happen. What can we do if we don't let it happen? Even our Southern Expeditionary Army has failed. The ministers began to discuss, and the entire palace was in chaos. This bad news cast a shadow over everyone's face. Some ministers became even more indignant and threatened to kill all the rebels in Euboea. But what was the use of this? Within the Euboea province, powerful uprisings broke out in almost all the cities. Under the attack of the Euboea army, the old citizens of Euboea cooperated with the outside to open the city gates and welcome the arrival of the Euboea army. One city after another was recovered. Charles XXVI was so angry that he was trembling. How could he not be angry when such a thing happened during his term of office? However, he still maintained his calm. He slowly stood up and said in a calm voice, "Gentlemen, the time for war has come again. A great war is unavoidable. I now give the order to begin the mobilization of the entire country. We will fight this so-called New Euboea at all costs. I will not allow the empire to be divided." The more Charles XXVI spoke, the more agitated he became. In the end, he raised his voice. "Your Majesty, please don't. Your Majesty, please calm down. Your Majesty, please don't send troops out of anger." The ministers panicked when they heard this. They all tried to persuade him. The destruction of the 500,000 army, the capture of the commander, the establishment of the kingdom, and the powerhouse of the sacred domain. These were a series of problems that needed to be considered. A wise person would know at a glance that starting a war now was not the best choice. "Say no more," Charles XXVI roared. "The Euboea province was incorporated into the territory of my father. It must not be lost in my hands." With that, he paused and raised his head slightly. His eyes were filled with determination. "I will personally lead the expedition and eliminate these damn rebels in one fell swoop. Your Majesty, please reconsider." Mallory became nervous. No one knew the current military situation of the empire better than him. The 500,000 army expedition to the south had already consumed a lot of the empire's resources. Coupled with the greed of the officials, there were not many gold coins left in the treasury. What could they use to fight? "Your Majesty, don't forget about the powerhouse of the sacred domain. Mallory reminded. Without the support of the Holy See, how can we deal with the powerhouse of the sacred domain, Ron? Yes, I almost forgot about that. Charles XXVI calmed down when he heard this. He nodded and said, yes, we still have to communicate with the Holy See about this matter. Let's see if they can send one or two powerhouses of the sacred domain to accompany our Empire's army. This way, we will have confidence in dealing with the powerhouse of the sacred domain. By the way, where is the Saintess supervising the battle? I heard that she is a genius of the Salter family. She has been recalled to Mount Hygel. Mallory replied. Charles XXVI frowned and showed dissatisfaction on his face. The Holy See, at this time, he slowly sat down and waved his scepter gently. Send these 2 war reports to Mount Hygel. I believe they will know what to do. Necromancers. Isn't this what they think of as heresy? I believe that Ernst will send people to deal with it. Charles XXVI smiled and seemed to be in a better mood. He glanced at Mallory and said, go and get in touch with the Abia rebels. It is impossible for us to recognize the Empire. I hope that they will realize their mistakes and turn back. I will not pursue this matter. Don't think that they are qualified to fight against us just because they have 1 or 2 powerhouses of the sacred domain. Also, spend some gold coins to redeem Elchin. Yes, Your Majesty. Hee. Charles XXVI smiled sinisterly. This matter was done beautifully. He kicked this matter to the Holy See like kicking a rubber ball. Originally, this was a matter of the Holy Roman Empire, but now the Holy See was involved. Didn't the Holy See want to eliminate the necromancers? Didn't you want to eliminate the heresy? He is in the Abia province. Anyway, the Empire does not have a single powerhouse of the sacred domain. You can do as you see fit. On Mount Hygel, in a huge room on the peak of God's prophecy, the lords of the 9 holy temples, including Pope Ernst, were all sitting there. A huge round table separated the 9 people. Pope Ernst was sitting in the middle. He was wearing a white robe, and his hair was covered with silver flowers. He looked like a kind old man. Now, the Holy See had 10 powerhouses of the sacred domain. Other than the position of the Dead Warden, there was one who did not have a position for the time being. However, he would definitely be put in an important position because he was a powerhouse of the sacred domain. Viacardo was about 50 years old. He was a paladin and a powerhouse of the sacred domain. After being recruited by the Holy See, he replaced the position of Wharton, the commander of Guangming, who was killed by Ron. He was in charge of the Holy Crusade. Higman was about 30 years old. He was a paladin and a powerhouse of the sacred domain. He was one of the most outstanding soldiers of the Holy Roman Empire. After discovering this genius, the Holy See used various means to get him. However, he did not have a position, but it was inevitable that he would be put in an important position because he was a powerhouse of the sacred domain. 10 powerhouses of the sacred domain. The Holy See had 10 powerhouses of the sacred domain. It ushered in the most powerful period after His Majesty Ernst became the Pope. After listening to Saintess Godeli's report, Ernst fell into a rare silence. He took a deep breath, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Chapter 557. As soon as Pope's voice fell, the holy priest of the Hall of Redemption, Imena, stood up and said sternly, "What other opinions do you have? No matter how strong this heretic becomes, even if he becomes a powerhouse of the sacred domain, I swear to hunt him down." Imena and Ron had an irreconcilable feud. Ron had killed the Hall of Piety, and the Hall Master of the Hall of Piety, Sacred Swordsman Wharton, was her lover. Ernst glanced at Imena and gestured for her to sit down. "Your Excellency Imena, no one said that we won't kill him. It's just that we need to take our time and think about it." The new Hall Master of the Hall of Piety, Beccardo, stood up. "Your Majesty Pope, is this heretic Ron really that powerful? He's just a necromancer. A necromancer. Everyone knows what kind of profession it is. It's just a profession that summons some strange skeletons for children to sit on. I've never heard of it having any fighting power. The sacred domain is even more of a joke. When did a necromancer become a powerhouse of the sacred domain? It was obvious that this new Holy See paladin didn't know the true power of necromancy. In the Hall of Judgment, Hall Master Guangming Judge Nord laughed. Your Excellency Beccardo, are you referring to the necromancers, who are now busking on the streets of the Roland Empire? Is there a difference? Beccardo's eyes widened as he said, I wandered the world at a very young age and joined various mercenary groups. I started from the lowest level until I became the leader of a large mercenary group. Beccardo shook his head. Your Excellency Judge Nord, I've never seen a necromancer who can fight, let alone a powerhouse of the sacred domain. At this time, Pope Ernst said in a deep voice, Your Excellency Beccardo, this Ron is an ancient necromancer. 100,000 years ago, on the Amros continent, which was the predecessor of the Noah continent, necromancers were a powerful profession and also the archenemy of our Holy See. After hundreds of years of holy war, our Holy See defeated these heretics and sent these harmful, evil, and strange necromancers and necromancers back to hell. Ernst explained the origin of the ancient necromancers. After listening to the history of necromancers, Beccardo took a deep breath and nodded. I understand. This guy named Ron is an ancient necromancer and the true enemy of our Holy See. We must prevent these evil necromancers from reviving, right? Yes. Ernst nodded and said in a clear voice, We discovered his existence a long time ago and sent experts to hunt him down. Unfortunately, his luck was too good. He escaped time and time again. Now, he has even become a Saint Realm expert. Ernst's face was dejected. Speaking of which, I bear a great deal of responsibility for this matter. Your Majesty Pope, don't blame yourself. In the Hall of Judgment, Guangming Magistrate Ivan said, No one wanted this to happen. We did our best. We can only blame this Ron for being too cunning. In the Hall of Honor, the commander of the Holy Knights, Boulder, frowned. Didn't I hear that the Parliament had issued a kill order? Why does this guy seem to be completely fine? Sigh. Don't mention it. Ernst sighed. The kill order has been revoked by the Speaker. No matter how much I protest, it's useless. Speaking of this, Ernst was filled with anger. He didn't know how this kid Ron had the ability to make the Parliament revoke the kill order. When this proposal came out, Speaker Frigga, Vice Speaker Firth, and several senators unanimously agreed. Ernst, who went to the meeting, was stunned. In the end, he could only remain silent. In the Holy Roman Empire, and even in the entire human world, as a member of the Holy See, Pope Ernst was an important figure. But in the Parliament, which was dominated by powerful magical beasts, he was nothing. If that's the case, we can only do it ourselves. A cold light flashed in Imena's eyes. I also heard that Ron established the Scourge Church in the Abia province. The strength of the sacred domain, a powerful kingdom. With the strength of a kingdom. Ernst's expression was grave. This is already a force that can't be ignored. What I'm more worried about is the further spread of necromancy magic. When that happens, it'll be troublesome. Ernst also felt that it was very troublesome. Ron had become a powerhouse of the sacred domain so quickly, which greatly exceeded everyone's expectations and caught them unprepared. Back then, he was a necromancer chased by the Holy See everywhere. Suddenly, he had become a colossus, and it was too late for the Holy See to act. We should start a new holy war, Imena said coldly. Once again, send this evil and strange necromancy magic back to hell. I believe justice will prevail over evil, and Guangming will be victorious in the end. That's right. That's right. Let's mobilize the army and kill him. Destroy them. Imena's proposal received everyone's approval. On the matter of dealing with heretics, the 9 Holy Temple's lords were surprisingly unanimous. How about this? In the Hall of Honor, Boulder, the head of the Holy Knights, stood up. I've decided to send the Holy Knights to participate in the battle. We'll attack Abia and destroy the Scourge Church's nest in one fell swoop. Holy Knights? The elders were surprised when they heard this. What was the Holy Knights? It was a powerful army composed entirely of Holy Knights, with a total of more than 30,000 people. Don't underestimate these 30,000 people. The combat power they displayed was stronger than the 500,000 troops of the Holy Roman Empire. Why? Different people had different strengths. The Holy Knights were composed of powerhouses, and there were no weaklings. The lowest level was an intermediate Holy Knight, and there were Master Glorious Knights and Master Honorary Knights everywhere. Together with the Holy Knight of the Sacred Domain, Boulder, it was a terrifying force that made the whole continent tremble in fear. It couldn't be compared to the Southern Expedition Army of the Holy See, where even trainee swordsmen could serve as team leaders. It could be said that in a direct confrontation, the 500,000 Southern Expedition Army wouldn't be able to last a single round in front of the Holy Knights. Since we're starting a holy war. Mercado also stood up. The Holy Crusade will also participate. The Hall of Redemption will send a team of priests to participate. Imena also said, not to be outdone. The power of Guangming that we believe in is the natural nemesis of undead magic. The Holy Guardians will also participate. The Guangming law enforcers will also participate. Very good. Seeing that all the elders were so enthusiastic, Ernst smiled. With the power that the Holy See had accumulated for thousands of years, it wouldn't be a problem for them to wipe out a country. Not to mention the newly established Kingdom of Ebbia. Even the Roland Empire might not be able to stop the Holy Legion. At this time, Ernst's gaze fell on the new member, Higman. Since the beginning of the meeting, Higman hadn't said a word. As a powerful holy archer, maintaining silence was necessary. Ernst took the initiative to ask, Sir Higman, what do you think about this? All eyes fell on Higman. Many people were full of curiosity about this new member of the sacred domain. Your Majesty Pope. Higman nodded slightly and looked at everyone. I think that now is not the best time to start a holy war. Oh, why? Ernst suddenly became interested and asked. Higman said, everyone knows what the role of the assembly is. He looked at everyone. It is to mediate the disputes between all the powerful people of the sacred domain. They may not care about small conflicts, but if we start a holy war. Higman shook his head. It's too big of a commotion. It will definitely attract the attention of the assembly. It will be troublesome if they intervene. That's right. Pope Ernst nodded. He was quite afraid of the assembly that was above all living beings. He wished that he was also a powerful person of the sacred domain, because only a powerful person of the sacred domain would have some say in the assembly. Ordinary powerful people of the sacred domain would not be able to get a word in at all. Pope Ernst took a deep breath. Then what do you think we should do now, Your Excellency? Higman smiled slightly, revealing a sinister smile. According to the information I received, in 2 months, the chairman, vice chairman, and senators of the assembly will leave this continent. No one knows where they will go. I think that 2 months will be the best time for us to make our move. Higman was a holy archer. As an archer, he had to be calm, and seize the opportunity to kill in one shot. He had interpreted this very well. Very good. Ernst stood up excitedly. Then it's decided. In 2 months, we will gather the Holy Knights, the Holy Crusade, and other forces and head south. We will capture Ebbia and destroy the Scourged Church. Agreed. Agreed. That's right. Higman's suggestion received the approval of all the temple masters, and the matter was settled. We'll let this guy live for 2 more months. Imena said hatefully, a deep killing intent flashing in her eyes. Scourge Church's headquarters, Gloom City. In an ordinary room, Ron sat on the bed with his legs bent. His hands were clasped together, and his fingers were spread out like claws. He closed his eyes and quietly entered a state of cultivation. Black fog constantly filled the room. In Ron's hand, a black sphere quietly floated, emitting a thin amount of soul force. The current Ron's soul force had reached a terrifying level. It was much stronger than when he had advanced to the sacred domain. His sea of consciousness had long since turned into a vast ocean, and his soul force was close to limitless. Ron's soul within his sea of consciousness had turned into an indomitable giant. The strength of his soul brought about a series of transformations. Ron only felt that his strength had increased by quite a bit. In the sky, the soul vortex connected to the soul ring was constantly revolving. However, Ron discovered that the amount of soul force overflowing from the vortex had decreased by a lot. The so-called decrease in soul force was because Ron's strength had increased. In the past, when he was weak, The Soul Ring's power was close to limitless. However, now that he had advanced to the sacred domain, the help he received from the Soul Ring had decreased. The amount of soul force it could transmit to Ron was also limited. Soul Ring. Soul Ring, just what are you? Why do I feel that your use isn't as simple as storing soul force? Ron's spiritual sense swept through the Soul Ring, but he couldn't find any clues. He could only leave. After cultivating for a long time, Ron finally opened his eyes. The black fog that filled the sky gradually gathered and returned to Ron's body. So strong. My soul force increased again. Ron couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at the soul force within his sea of consciousness. But even so, I still haven't broken through to become a mid-rank sacred magus necromancer. Just how much soul force does one need to break through to become a mid-rank sacred magus necromancer? These past few days, aside from eating and sleeping, Ron had been cultivating with all his might. He needed strength, needed powerful strength. Although he was already very strong, he still felt that it wasn't enough. The Holy See's strength was too strong. Every temple master of the 9 holy temples had the strength of the sacred domain. This gave him a huge amount of pressure. In the entire Scourge Church, he was the only sacred domain powerhouse. However, what made Ron feel strange was that although the Scourge Church had been established for many days, and Nuabia had also established a kingdom, the Holy See hadn't allowed any pornographic novels to appear. Not only the Holy See, but even the Holy Roman Empire was the same. The destruction of the army of 500,000 and the independence of the Abia province. To the Holy Roman Empire, it was as if nothing had happened. Apart from Charles XX sending people to redeem Melchion, there was no news at all. The Holy Roman Empire seemed to have tacitly accepted this fact. The same went for God Eli. Logically speaking, after she escaped, the Holy See should have received news that he had become a sacred domain powerhouse. However, until now, nothing had happened, and they hadn't sent anyone to cause trouble for him. This wasn't normal. It was extremely abnormal. Ron knew that the Holy See would come sooner or later. This was a sign that a storm was coming. The seemingly calm atmosphere was suffocating. Ron took a deep breath and slowly got off the bed. He walked to the window and opened it. The morning sun shone down, making people feel refreshed. Chapter 558. With a heavy heart, Ron walked out of the room and opened the door. When he saw Vivian standing outside, he couldn't help but be startled. Thank the heavens, young master, you've finally come out. Vivian's eyes lit up when she saw Ron, and she smiled as she went up to him. Vivian, you're looking for me? Ron was a bit perverted. It seemed that Vivian had been waiting for a long time. Yes, young master, I have something to report to you. Vivian's face was brimming with excitement. It's about the Calamity Academy. Ron, the Calamity Academy has recently recruited more than 2,000 students. Some of them are extremely talented in necromancy magic, and some became beginner necromancers in just a few days. That's a good thing. Ron smiled. He didn't think that necromancy magic would have such a huge influence. The Scourge Church had just been established, and there were already so many people willing to learn necromancy magic. He was rather surprised by this result. In reality, the appearance of ancient necromancy magic was extremely shocking to the entire continent. In particular, necromancers who had learned the wrong necromancy magic all came to seek refuge. In a short period of time, the newly established Calamity Academy was overcrowded. Well done, Vivian. Please do your best to keep it up. Ron said happily. I'm very willing to see the Scourge Church's radiance illuminate the entire continent. Being praised by Ron, Vivian's heart was filled with sweetness. However, this was far from enough. Even though they had recruited many students, these new students didn't have much battle strength. Without a large number of powerhouses, the Scourge Church couldn't develop at all, nor could it make itself safer. The Scourge Church had flourished 100,000 years ago because of the countless powerhouses from the sacred domain and the divine domain supporting it. I have to go out for a while. Ron said, Vivian, I'll leave the Scourge Church to you during this time. Okay. Vivian had a hunch that Ron would go out. She nodded and said, The bone dragon let out a long roar, and its huge body left the ground. Ron mounted the bone dragon in a flash and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. In the face of the huge, holy sea, Ron could not help but feel the pressure. He had no choice but to go out and seek help. Ron's first stop was the Asia Minor snowfield. He was looking for his former companion, the holy beast of the sacred domain, the celestial wolf king Di-Lin. Facing Di-Lin, Ron's mood was a bit complicated. He knew that this wolf girl with excellent bloodline and outstanding talent had always had a faint feeling for him. Perhaps because of the friendship they had once fought together, Ron had never thought too deeply about it. Now that he thought about it, he felt that happiness had come too suddenly. As the overlord of the kingdom of magical beasts, why would the leader of the wolf clan, the celestial wolf king, take a fancy to him? Thinking of this, Ron could not help but laugh. Of course, he did not know that Di-Lin's grandmother had helped him a lot. The bone dragon was very fast. It only took a little more than a day to reach the sky above the Asia Minor snowfield. In the face of the whistling cold wind, the bone dragon slowed down a bit. Ron found the right direction and soon arrived at the ice castle where Di-Lin lived. With a move of his spiritual sense, he commanded the bone dragon to slowly descend. Di-Lin was startled when she felt the familiar fluctuation of aura. She immediately came out to greet him. When she saw Ron, she was surprised and happy. She cheered and rushed up to hug him. "Ron, why are you here? I'm here to see you." "Why? Am I not welcome?" Feeling Di-Lin's enthusiasm, Ron was touched. Although the north wind was biting cold, his heart was wrapped in a warm aura. "Welcome? Of course you're welcome. I can't welcome you enough." Di-Lin smiled sweetly. Like a little wife, she held Ron's hand and led him into the ice castle, leading him to a room. The fire in the fireplace crackled and burned, filling the room with warmth. Di-Lin pulled Ron to a large chair made of bear skin and sat down. Soon, a maid brought in some exquisite meat. "Ron, you've become stronger. You've already reached the sacred domain, haven't you?" Di-Lin looked Ron up and down and sighed. "It's only been a few months, and you've transformed from a master to a sacred domain powerhouse. It's clear that you're quite talented. I almost thought that some other magical beast from the sacred domain had come to fight with you." At this point, Di-Lin laughed. Ron felt ashamed. The reason he could advance to the sacred domain powerhouse was mostly due to Lord Noah. If not for Lord Noah providing him with a large amount of origin energy for him to absorb, he wouldn't have been able to advance to the sacred domain powerhouse for many years. "That was just a fluke," Ron said modestly. The two chatted for a while. At this time, Ron seemed to have thought of something. "By the way, that Joss didn't cause you any trouble, did he? You mean that level 15 magical beast, Dragonhawk?" Di-Lin was surprised. "That guy did come to bother me, but I chased him away," Di-Lin said nonchalantly as she waved her hand. "Oh," Ron nodded. From Di-Lin's tone, it seemed that the Dragonhawk had suffered a great loss at her hands. "By the way, why are you asking about him? Did he look for you?" Di-Lin asked. "If he dares to cause you any trouble, I'll help you teach him a lesson." No." Ron smiled faintly. He had concealed the matter of Dragon Island very well. Indeed, with his current strength, there was no need to speak of this matter. Di-Lin smiled and suddenly asked, "Ron, have you encountered any problems recently? Do you need my help?" Faced with Di-Lin's sudden question, Ron was a little unprepared and hesitated for a moment. Di-Lin stared at Ron's eyes and said seriously, "Ron, you don't have to hide it from me. I know you must have encountered some problems. You wouldn't have come to the Asia Minor snowfield for no reason. Tell me, I'll help you." Ron hesitated for a moment, but still told her the truth. Now, he was facing the powerful Holy Sea alone, and he indeed felt powerless. He desperately needed help. "I understand." After hearing the whole story, Di-Lin nodded and snorted. "Oomph. The Holy Sea is indeed a bunch of bastards. Don't worry, Ron. I absolutely support you." Di-Lin stood up and said resolutely, "Isn't it just the Holy Sea? I'm not afraid, Ron. Give me 2 days to deal with the affairs of the clan, and then I'll go to your whatever Undercity. If the Holy Sea dares to come, I guarantee that he won't be able to return. Dylan's eyes emitted a strong coldness as she spoke. Ron felt warm in his heart. Dylan was definitely one of the people who supported him unreservedly. This powerful magical beast girl seemed to be born to be his guardian angel. She even didn't hesitate to fight with the dragons for him. Dylan, thank you. Ron stepped forward, held Dylan's face, and kissed her passionately. Dylan blushed and lowered her head like a shy girl. She gently pushed him. What are you talking about, silly? After bidding farewell to Dylan, Ron quickly left the Asia Minor snowfield. His next stop was the Orc Empire. After becoming the champion of the Tournament of the Strongest, Ron was qualified to join the Golden Orc family. He was going to the Orc Empire this time to see if he could get some help from Li Jia. Ron first went to the Thorny Flower Castle to look for Morin. However, he found that Morin was no longer in the Thorny Flower Castle, but lived in the Empire's capital, Zuma City. Now that she was a holy wizard, her status was no longer the same as before. Ron could only ride the Bone Dragon and set off to Zuma City. Along the way, he paid close attention to the news from the Holy See. Fortunately, there was no movement from there. Ron's heart was slightly relieved. In a high-level wizard tower in the Orc Empire's capital, Zuma City, Ron finally saw Morin. Morin was very happy to see Ron's arrival. After the two exchanged greetings, Ron took the opportunity to ask for a meeting with Lord Li Jia. However, after hearing Ron's request, Morin sighed slightly. Looking at Morin's expression, Ron was slightly surprised. What's wrong, miss? Is there a problem? Morin bit her lips. It's like this. My grandfather, he has already expected your arrival, but he has made it clear that he won't see you. And what? Upon hearing this, Ron's heart slowly sank. He already had a premonition of what Morin was going to say. And he won't give you any help. He also ordered the Orc Empire to not get involved in the conflict between you and the Holy See, including me. Is that so? Ron's heart felt as if it had been hit hard by a sledgehammer. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Morin said these words with some difficulty. In fact, she did not know why her grandfather would give such an order. She felt that he was extremely afraid of the Holy See. However, although the Holy See was a human organization, it was not worth mentioning in her grandfather's eyes. Ron himself was a member of the Golden family. No matter what, it was reasonable to stand on Ron's side. I'm sorry, Ron. I can't help you with anything, Morin said apologetically. With her friendship with Ron, it was quite difficult for her to say these words. It's okay. I understand. Ron's expression was bitter, and his voice was trembling. Although he had participated in the Battle of the Strongest and won the championship and joined the Golden family, in the eyes of the Orcs, he was still an outsider. Ron did not hear what Morin said after that. He hastily said goodbye to Morin and left the Orc Empire. Sigh. Looking at Ron's lonely back, Morin felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. However, she did not dare to go against her grandfather's decision. How is it? Does your heart ache? Just as Morin was looking at the sky in a daze, a voice came from behind her. Morin turned around. Who else could it be but her grandfather? This skinny old man was looking at her with a benevolent expression. Grandfather. Morin's eyes turned red. She was about to cry. Grandfather. I don't understand. Ron needs our help the most. Why can't we help him? Even if you don't understand, you have to understand. Before Morin could finish, Li Jia interrupted her. The establishment of the Scourge Church will lead to a war with the Holy See. I have already predicted this. Because of this, I am determined to reject it. We, the Orcs, must not join either side, and do not get involved in this mess. Morin widened her eyes in shock. Grandfather, you seem to be a little worried about the Holy See. Isn't it a human religious organization that doesn't even have a divine powerhouse? Chapter 559. Grandpa, is what you said true? Morin raised her teary eyes and asked in surprise. It's true, Li Jia sighed and replied. He seemed to have aged a few decades in an instant. He smiled and touched Morin's head lovingly. Child, the future of the Orc Empire depends on you. Grandpa, Grandpa is very likely not here anymore. Grandpa, where are you going? Morin was even more surprised. A place that only God knows. Li Jia replied with a smile. After leaving the Orc Empire, Ron was extremely depressed. He had gone through so much to finally become the golden family of the Orcs, but in the end, he was not recognized by the Orcs. Forget it, let's not think about this. Let's think about what to do next. Ron thought to himself. With a thought, the Bone Dragon roared and turned around, heading directly to the Balrog's Academy. Balrog's Academy was as peaceful as ever. The sound of students reading could be heard in the classrooms. Under the shade of the trees and among the flowers, students could be seen in groups of 3 to 5. They were reading eagerly with books in their hands. In a garden corridor, more than 10 beautiful girls sat quietly in a circle with books in their hands. From the magic robes they wore, it could be seen that they were all students from the elite magician class of the Balrog's Academy. At this time, a blonde girl asked a chestnut-haired girl next to her, "Allie, how should I say this magic spell?" The chestnut-haired girl was Allie, Aunt Susan's daughter. Ron had sent her to the Balrog's Academy to study. She was very talented in magic and smart, so she quickly became one of the best in the magician class. After hearing the blonde girl's question, Allie reluctantly raised her head from the magic book in her hands. She took the book seriously and looked at it a few times. This magic spell should be said like this, #%, #%. Isn't it supposed to be said like this? Yin #%, yin *%. The blonde girl was surprised. Wrong. Allie shook her head. The tutor said in class that this way of casting magic is wrong. She also sternly criticized this kind of wrong magic that misleads students. So that's it. No wonder I didn't make a single spark. After listening to Ellie's explanation, the blonde girl said sincerely, "Ellie, you really are the best student in our magician class too." Ellie smiled, her face revealing a trace of pride. Here, she had found a most important value in her life, which was her dignity. As an ordinary commoner in the academy, she had obtained the recognition and even friendship of many noble students through her own efforts. Some princesses of academies even invited her to work for the magicians of their respective kingdoms because they saw her potential. "Ellie, are you an advanced magician now?" At this moment, a girl in a white magic robe asked with a smile. She wore a beautiful bow on her head and exuded a faint aura of nobility. On the contrary, Ellie's clothes were somewhat shabby. However, in this place, no one dared to look down on her. "I passed the advanced mage exam 2 months ago," Ellie said calmly, as if she was talking about something that had nothing to do with her. "Wow, TSK. Ellie's words caused a burst of exclamations from the other girls. They looked at Ellie with envy. In this place, no matter if they were commoners or nobles, their status was the same. They were all students. Students who studied well would naturally gain the respect of everyone. "Ellie," at this moment, a voice interrupted the conversation of the female magicians. They saw a young man slowly approaching. He was tall and handsome, with a head full of noble blonde hair and a warm smile on his face. Prince Harry. All the female magicians greeted the young man. Many of them looked at Prince Harry with faint admiration. Prince Harry was a noble knight. Like Shea, he rode a silver-winged Pegasus. His handsome face and noble mount instantly won the hearts of all the girls. Along with Prince Harry were a few of his followers. However, Prince Harry didn't seem to notice the gazes of the other girls. He walked straight to Ellie and magically produced a large bouquet of flowers. He handed it to Ellie and said affectionately, "Ellie, this is for you." Wow, what a beautiful flower. Ellie is so lucky. She actually got Prince Harry's attention. The girls all looked at her with envy. However, Ellie's expression remained calm. She sat in place without moving. She smiled and said, "Sorry, Harry, I don't want it." All the girls were petrified when they heard this. Prince Harry gave Ellie flowers and she didn't want them? This was definitely a big news in the academy. Prince Harry heard this and immediately knelt down on one knee. "Ellie, don't you know my feelings? I like you. I want to be with you. Marry me. Marry him. Marry him. Be together, be together." These magicians who wanted to see the world in chaos all started to jeer. Ellie's expression remained calm. She glanced at the girls around her indifferently. When their eyes met, they immediately quieted down. Harry, leave. I don't want to think about this problem now. Ellie had already ordered him to leave. When Harry heard this, his face flushed red. There was a faint trace of anger in his eyes. As a prince, what could he not get even if he wanted it? With his family and strength, as well as the excellent bloodline he inherited from the nobility, many girls fell in love with him at first sight. However, this Ellie was like a hard bone to chew. With Prince Harry's usual temperament, he would have already exploded at this moment. However, he didn't dare to. Harry knew that he was definitely no match for this girl who was as calm as an ancient well, even if she was younger than him by a few years. Prince Harry waited until High Firth, Shea, Ron, and the other school overlords graduated. After that, he started to act like a tyrant in the academy. He rode on a silver-winged Pegasus and rampaged through the academy. He was just like Shea in the past, but Shea was much more low-key than he was. However, he didn't expect that after he bullied a student, he would bump into Ellie. The two of them had a disagreement and started to fight. Neither of them had the upper hand, so the two agreed to a duel in 3 days. 3 days later, in the academy's big square, Prince Harry, the silver-winged Pegasus Knight, was defeated by Ellie in front of everyone. This caused a sensation in the academy. Prince Harry had suffered a great humiliation, and Ellie had become the talk of the town in the academy overnight. No one would have thought that this girl, who usually kept a low profile, never smiled, and only focused on studying magic, would actually have such powerful strength. However, Prince Harry wasn't angry. He didn't even hold a grudge against Ellie. On the contrary, he started to pursue Ellie, who had defeated him. That was why this scene happened. If you can't conquer a woman on the field, then you can only conquer her in bed. No one knew if Prince Harry thought so, but he did. Unfortunately, Ellie didn't buy it. Seeing that Prince Harry didn't move, Ellie frowned and raised her eyebrows slightly. What? Aren't you going to leave? I'm sorry. Prince Harry hurriedly put away his flowers and stood up, his face red. Sorry, everyone, for disturbing you. After bowing, he took his men and fled as fast as they could. Sigh. Looking at Prince Harry's back, some girls felt a trace of regret from the bottom of their hearts. Why wasn't Prince Harry the one who liked her? The blonde girl looked at Ellie enviously. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and smiled. "Oh right, Ellie. What are your plans after graduation?" "I haven't thought about it yet." "Why?" Ellie asked. "Really?" The blonde girl's eyes lit up and she reached out to hug her. "Why don't you come to our kingdom? With your strength, you can become our country's court magician. Then we sisters can be together every day." Before Ellie could speak, a little girl next to her loudly protested. "Ellie, don't listen to her. What's so good about being a court magician? It's so boring to stay in the palace every day. Come to our family. Our family's business covers the entire Noah continent. You can go wherever you want. It's great." As soon as Ellie graduated, she would be a magister. A magister who graduated from the Balarax Academy would naturally be the target of all the major forces. Before Ellie could say anything, the blonde girl and the white-robed girl began to argue. Okay, stop arguing. I said, I haven't thought about it yet." Ellie was a little helpless. She smiled and stopped the war between the two. The blonde girl and the white-robed girl stopped. Ellie smiled bitterly. She didn't think that this would cause so much trouble. In her current mind, she only wanted to improve her strength. As for the future, she had never thought about it. Just as she was about to speak, the clear sky suddenly darkened. It was as if a black curtain had descended. The whole space was frozen, and the air was filled with a suffocating aura. That aura came from the sky. What? What is that? A beautiful girl's face was filled with fear. She pointed at the sky with a trembling finger and stammered. In the sky, a huge beast appeared. Its body was covered in bones, and there were sinister horns on its head. Its entire body was filled with the aura of death. Dragon, it's a dragon. No, that's an undead creature. So strong, it's a powerhouse from the sacred domain. A powerhouse from the sacred domain has come to the Balarax Academy. What does he want to do? Hurry and inform the dean. The arrival of the abyssal skeletal dragon caused the entire Balarax Academy to be in chaos. The students' faces were filled with fear as they fled in all directions. To them, a powerhouse from the sacred domain was an unreachable existence. What was even more frightening was that they didn't know whether this powerhouse from the sacred domain was a friend or foe. It's him. There's no mistaking it. He's here. Ellie looked at the bone dragon in the sky quietly, and her heart began to beat rapidly. She saw a figure standing proudly on the dragon's back. Although she couldn't see his face clearly, from the aura he emitted, this person's strength was even more terrifying than the skeletal dragon's. Ron rode the skeletal dragon and appeared in the sky above the Balarax Academy. The huge skeletal dragon's body was covered in intense black flames as it lightly swept past. Suddenly, Ron seemed to have discovered something. He stopped and put away the skeletal dragon before landing on the ground. This is standing in the spacious plaza of the Balarax Academy. There were several dozen huge statues standing tall. One of them attracted Ron's attention. That was his statue. He was holding a dragonbone staff and riding a skeletal dragon that was about to take flight. His long magic robe fluttered in the wind, and an unyielding gaze could be seen on his rock-like face. Ron calmly stood in front of the statue for a long time without leaving. He slowly crouched down and gently stroked the name engraved in front of the statue, as well as his introduction. Chapter 560. Look, he's the one riding on the back of the bone dragon. What's he doing there? He seems to be looking at that statue. That's the statue of the great Grand Necromancer Ron, the youngest expert of the sacred domain in history, a former student of the Academy, and also my idol. Hey, look, that person looks a bit like the statue. A girl pointed at Ron and said to the surrounding students, "It can't be, it's true. Could it be that he's Ron? He's Ron? How is that possible?" In front of Ron's statue, a circle of students were pointing at Ron. Some of them had already recognized Ron's identity. "Big Brother Ron." A voice came from the crowd. Ron looked over and saw a pretty girl walking out from the crowd. His eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "Ellie, how come it's you?" "Ah, Ellie actually knows Lord Ron." The blonde girl was surprised, and so was the white-robed girl beside her. Her mouth formed an O shape. Moreover, she's interested in Big Brother Ron. How is that possible? Ron is now an expert of the sacred domain. I've never heard her say that she has anything to do with Ron. "Ellie, how are you doing here?" When Ellie walked to his side, Ron asked with a pleasant expression, "Big Brother Ron, I'm doing very well here." Ellie nodded and said, "Little girl, you've grown up. You're almost as tall as me." Ron smiled and patted Ellie's head. He looked her up and down and secretly nodded. "Not bad. Your strength is already that of an advanced mage. It seems that sending you here to study magic was the right choice." Ellie smiled like an iceberg melting. This poor but sensible little girl revealed her cute little canine teeth in front of Ron. "Ron." At this moment, Vice Dean Dabbs's voice came into his ears. He complained as soon as he arrived. "You scare me. I thought someone had come. So it's this kid." He narrowed his eyes as he spoke. "What? You're here to see the dean, right?" "Yes, Vice Dean. Please inform him that his former student, Ron, requests an audience." Ron bowed slightly, his attitude as humble as ever. A sacred domain expert bowed to him, giving Dabbs face in front of the students. He smiled with satisfaction. "Hee, the dean already knows that you're here. Please follow me." After Ron left with Dabbs, the students in front of the statue were in an uproar as they discussed. "Ellie, tell me the truth. What's your relationship with Ron?" After Ron left, the blonde girl, the white-robed girl, and a group of female mages surrounded Ellie and asked, "He's my older brother, and he's also the one who sent me here to study." The students finally realized what was going on, and some of them had envious looks on their faces. "I also want a sacred domain expert as my older brother," the blonde girl said enviously. In the dean's office, Ron and Pratt sat on the sofa together. Unlike Morin, Pratt agreed very quickly after hearing Ron's intentions. "Very good. I've been unhappy with those Holy See fellows for a long time. If we can teach them a lesson, I believe we won't refuse." We? Ron was stunned. He didn't know what we meant. Yes, we. Pratt smiled calmly. Soaring Dragon Academy's Montego and Hans Academy's Hill are my companions, so that's how it is. Ron nodded in realization. He suddenly had 3 sacred domain experts on his side. Ron was very happy, as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. At this time, Pratt added, "Of course, this only refers to the 3 of us, not the students of the 3 academies." "That's natural." Ron smiled and nodded. Those students were weak and didn't have much combat experience. Sending them to the battlefield would be sending them to their deaths. Besides, the academy was only a place to nurture talents. No academy would send their students to their deaths. "Sir Dean, thank you." Facing the old dean, Ron sincerely bowed to him. Every time he was at his lowest point, it was this ordinary-looking old dean who gave him protection and the deepest support. Even when he became a sacred domain expert, it was still the same. It could be said that Pratt's contribution to Ron's success today couldn't go unnoticed. Pratt smiled kindly. He took out something from his bosom. It was a blue stone. "Ron, when you need us, just crush this and you'll be able to open a spatial passage and teleport us here." He handed the blue stone to Ron. "Remember, this little thing can only be used once. Ron, keep it well." "Thank you, Sir Dean." Ron carefully put it away as if he was holding a newborn baby. He bid farewell to the old dean and left Ballarak's academy on the Bone Dragon, returning to Gloom City. Gloom City was as peaceful as ever. However, there was a tinge of tension in this tranquility. Squads of soldiers shuttled through the city, lined up neatly with weapons in their hands. Their expressions were cold and handsome. The Calamity headquarters in Gloom City was Ron's residence. It was also the core of the city. As soon as Ron landed on the Bone Dragon, he saw Kadena, Shea, Becerra, and the others coming out to greet him. Following them was New Abia's queen, Juliana. Juliana looked anxious and uneasy. Seeing Ron return, she secretly sighed in relief. Celestial Wolf King D. Lin had already arrived. She stood to the side and smiled at Ron. Ron nodded at her as a greeting. "Ron, you're finally back." Kadena's eyes were red as she gave him a big hug. "I missed you so much. My dear pornographic novel." "I missed you too." Ron hugged Kadena lightly before looking around and asking, "What happened? You all seem to be very nervous." Ron, New Abia's queen, Juliana, looked around and hesitated. Ron understood and nodded. "Let's talk in the hall." In the spacious Hall of the Dead, more than 10 chairs were filled with people. They were the core members of the Scourge Church and the Kingdom of Ebbia. Other than Vivian, who was still recuperating, almost everyone was present, including the newly joined Elin. "Speak, Your Majesty Juliana. What's the situation in the Holy Roman Empire now?" As soon as Ron sat down, he immediately asked straightforwardly, "The people sitting here are all trustworthy people. You can rest assured that you can speak." Juliana glanced at Lin, who she did not know, and said softly, "Ron, something big has happened." She looked nervous. "According to the news I received from the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire is secretly mobilizing troops and preparing to attack us again." "Your Majesty." At this time, Lachlan sneered, "What's wrong with that? We'll just chase them away again. This time, I won't let the iron hooves of the Holy Roman Empire step into Ebbia." Lachlan had recently become the supreme general of the new kingdom of Ebbia. He was in high spirits, and the way he spoke had also become arrogant. Although Lachlan's attitude was arrogant, most people did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. For the current Ebbia, an army of 500,000 soldiers was not a problem at all. The current Ebbia had just been established, and the power of the kingdom was gradually centralizing. The country was at its peak, and the army was powerful. It was simply not the same as before. Ron did not care about the army of the Holy Roman Empire. He was more concerned about the movements of the few powerhouses from the sacred domain. If that was all, it would be easy to handle. But things are not that simple. Juliana bit her lips. "Ron, our spies have also discovered that many of the holy cathedrals in the Holy Roman Empire have been empty. The priests, bishops, and guards of the Holy See have all disappeared." "What does this mean?" Ron frowned. He seemed to have grasped something. I think this means that the Holy See is preparing to attack us. Juliana's voice was trembling as she said this. Their powerhouses are gathering. Perhaps what we are facing is not an ordinary army of the Holy Roman Empire, but a powerful Holy Legion with a firm belief. Holy Legion. Hearing Juliana's words, everyone's expression changed. A powerful legion composed entirely of powerhouses from the Holy See. What kind of concept was that? This had already subverted the common army of the Noah continent. Their strength was unimaginable. Is the Holy See finally coming? Ron took a deep breath. He clenched his fists slightly, and his body trembled with excitement. He stood up abruptly. Very good. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. If they want to come, then let them come. I have made all the necessary preparations. All the necessary preparations? Juliana did not understand what Ron was referring to. Just as she was about to ask, suddenly, an extremely powerful aura came from the horizon. Everyone's expression changed. This aura was a powerhouse from the sacred domain. The strength of this aura far exceeded that of an ordinary master. There was no doubt that it was a powerhouse from the sacred domain. In other words, an extremely powerful powerhouse from the sacred domain had graced Undercity with his presence. Could it be that a powerhouse from the Holy Sea's sacred domain has come? Lachlan's voice was full of fear. In the face of a powerhouse from the sacred domain, his previous high-spirited appearance had been thrown far away. At this moment, Ron's heart skipped a beat, and he said, "No, it doesn't feel like the aura of the Holy See. Instead, it feels like a magical beast. It seems to be a super magical beast with noble royal bloodline." D-Lin's face also showed a dignified expression, and she said, "Let's go out and take a look." Everyone was on high alert as they walked out of the Undead Hall and came to the huge balcony of the Calamity headquarters. The powerhouse from the sacred domain was very fast, and in a short while, he was above Undercity. D-Lin and Ron looked at each other, and at the same time, they activated the power in their bodies, releasing the aura of the sacred domain without reservation. This was also the way the powerhouses from the sacred domain greeted each other. If the visitor had no ill intentions, they should obediently retreat. However, not only did the unfamiliar aura not retreat, but it also rushed in their direction. "He's here," D-Lin snorted. "Is he here to provoke us? Ron, do you want me to go up and stop him? Otherwise, if we fight here, I'm afraid it will cause a lot of damage." "It doesn't look like it." Ron frowned. "I don't feel any killing aura from him. Let's take a look first." He was getting closer and closer. Chapter 561. That's... Ron's face lit up when he saw the face of the youth in the sky. "It's Kay." Rainey shrieked as she pointed at the sky. The youth was none other than Kay. The once powerful, high-grade demonic beast with the golden Beaumont bloodline had arrived at Gloom City. Karan. The moment Kay landed, Ron, Becerra, and Rainey, who were familiar with her, went up to her. "Sister, Ron, Rainey." Kay cheered, their arms tightly clasped together. "Who is he?" Kadena asked D-Lin quietly. She could tell that the youth in front of her was a demonic beast. "I don't know him." D-Lin shook her head. "But I can tell that he's a Beaumont." "Beaumont?" The moment D-Lin said the two words Beaumont, everyone was stunned. No one would have thought that this ordinary-looking, skinny, and weak youth was the most powerful demonic beast in the Noah continent. "Is he here to help us?" Juliana was surprised and elated. With the addition of this powerful Beaumont, their chances of winning against the Holy See army had increased significantly. "I think so," D-Lin said. "To be exact, he's here to help Ron." "Kay, why are you here?" Ron asked with a smile after Kay greeted Becerra, Rainey, and the rest. After he was taken away by Hao Qin, there had been no news of him. Ron wanted to look for him, but he gave up due to his lack of power. My grandpa isn't here, so I sneaked out," Kay said proudly. "I don't want to stay in that godforsaken place for a second longer. It's better to be out here." "Ron, I heard that you've established the Scourge Church. You've finally achieved your dream. You don't mind me coming to work for you, do you?" Of course you're welcome." Ron beamed. With such a free fighter, What else could he be dissatisfied with? What the Scourge Church lacked the most now was strong fighters, especially those from the sacred domain. Grandpa brought you back. Did your father make things difficult for you? Becerra asked worriedly. Look at your life at Beaumont's. You've lost weight. Oomph. How dare he? Kay sneered. He wanted to teach me a lesson the moment my grandpa brought me back. Who would have thought that I would teach him a lesson instead? Now, he doesn't dare to be fierce with me. Kay, you actually hit your own father? Rainey was shocked. Kay's actions had completely overturned her worldview. Hee, Rainey, the world of magical beasts is like this. The bigger fist is the law. Father, son, and family are all luxuries. If you look at the world of magical beasts from humans' perspective, you'll break down. Ron said with a smile. He had a better understanding of magical beasts. Oh, Rainey nodded her head, not fully understanding. Rainey, it's not like that. Kay hurriedly explained. If my father didn't go overboard, I wouldn't have wanted to be calculated with him. It was because he went overboard that day that I couldn't take it anymore and fought back. Speaking up to this point, he sighed. However, I still can't beat Grandpa. He is indeed very strong. Before he transformed, I was already no match for him. If it wasn't for that, I would have run out long ago. How does your grandpa treat you? Ron asked. Not bad. Kay scratched his head and said, he brought me along, taught me skills, and taught me how to fight. My ability has increased by 1 level compared to before. I'm already a 14-level magical beast. I see. Ron finally understood. After all, anyone would value such an outstanding descendant. Kay's bloodline was outstanding, and it was even the legendary golden bloodline. Hao Qin would also do his best to nurture him. Oh, right. Brother Ron, don't hold a grudge against my grandpa. That day, it was an unintentional mistake. I think he won't find trouble with you in the future. Regarding the past, I apologize to you on his behalf. Please forgive him, Kay said embarrassedly and bowed deeply. It wasn't an unintentional mistake. Thinking back to the time when Hao Qin almost killed him, Ron felt a little unconvinced. However, at the same time, he smiled bitterly. What was his ability? What was Hao Qin's ability? Bickering with him? Ron knew that he wasn't qualified to do so. However, in retrospect, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was an unintentional mistake. When one's ability reached Hao Qin's level, whether it was an unintentional mistake or not was no longer important. It was a complete disregard for life. All right, for your sake, I won't bicker with him. Ron nodded and said, oh, right. Kay, you came at the right time. Now is the time when I need help. As he spoke, he briefly explained the feud between himself and the Holy See. Then he said, Kay, I need you to stay here and help me fight against the Holy See. No problem. Kay agreed without hesitation. Brother Ron's enemy is my enemy. Don't worry, I'll definitely help you teach them a lesson. As she spoke, Kay's eyes flashed fiercely. A golden light flashed in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing her sharp teeth. Beaumont's fierceness was on full display at this moment. That's great. At this time, Juliana took the initiative to welcome them. She extended her hand enthusiastically and said with a smile, You're Kay, right? I'm Juliana, king of the new kingdom of Ebbia. Welcome to us. With you joining us, we'll have more confidence in fighting against the Holy See. Faced with this woman who took the initiative to welcome them, Kay couldn't help but roll her eyes. She looked at Ron with a look that said, Who are you? Look. Juliana's hand froze in midair. She was extremely embarrassed. At this time, she realized that she had made a mistake, a very serious mistake. How could a proud Beaumont, with the strength of the sacred domain, think highly of a human? It wasn't just Beaumont. Most magical beasts were like this. Lynn liked Ron, and sometimes she would more or less give him face. Kay, on the other hand, was completely unruly. She was on good terms with Ron because of their previous friendship. If not for this friendship, she wouldn't even say half a word. But fortunately, what happened next dispelled Juliana's embarrassment. A soldier of the kingdom of Ebbia ran in and whispered a few words in her ear. Juliana's face changed greatly. Not good. The Holy See has made their move. What? This news was like a bomb, shocking everyone in an instant. The Holy See has already made their move? Ron's face darkened. What's the situation now? Everyone stared at Juliana, and the tense atmosphere spread in the air. It's like this. Juliana's face was a little pale. She calmed herself down and said, "According to my reliable information, the Holy See has already gathered 60,000 troops in the border cities in the name of pilgrimage. They are marching south, launching an operation called Guangming Storm. The purpose is to drive out all the darkness. This operation is also called the New Holy War. In other words, they are specifically targeting the Scourge Church. Now, the army of the Holy See has begun to attack the border cities of Abia. According to the news I just received, the border town of Tanang City in Abia only resisted for 2 hours before it was declared to have fallen." 2 hours? Juliana's words stunned everyone. If one was not a core member of the Kingdom of Abia or the Scourge Church, one would not understand what this meant. Tanang City was an important border town of the Kingdom of Abia. Juliana had stationed 300,000 troops there to fight against the Holy Roman Empire. Unexpectedly, in the face of the 60,000 troops of the Holy See, Tanang City was declared to have fallen after only 2 hours of resistance. One could imagine how terrifying the combat power of the 60,000 troops of the Holy See was. These 60,000 troops were not an ordinary army, but the elite troops of the Holy See. The strength of the soldiers in an ordinary army varied, and the good and the bad were mixed together. However, this holy army was full of powerhouses. With such a terrifying army, conquering a city was as easy as blowing off dust. Pornographic novels. This holy army was led by a powerhouse from the sacred domain of the Holy See. The leader did not appear, and I don't know who it was. However, the vanguard was led by the Lord of the Hall of Glory, Boulder. The Holy Crusade, led by him, easily breached Tanang City. Juliana's face was filled with horror. The way this war was going was far beyond her imagination. Facing this powerful and elite team, Juliana felt a sense of powerlessness in her heart, as if they were crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. They came so quickly. Lachlan's face was also filled with horror. They actually attacked without declaring war. The Holy See is really shameless. "Ron, what do we do now?" Juliana asked in a trembling voice. The Holy See's undeclared war showed their ambition to invade. She knew in her heart that the weak kingdom of Ebia could not resist this army. At this moment, a trace of fear surged in her heart. Could it be that the newly established kingdom of Ebia was going to be destroyed in the flames of war again? All eyes were fixed on Ron. For a moment, Ron felt an extremely heavy pressure. This pressure was so strong that it made it difficult for him to breathe. Ron stood quietly by the railing with his hands behind his back. He forced himself to calm down and fell into deep thought. The disparity was simply too great. A total of 60,000 soldiers. Although 60,000 soldiers did not seem like a lot, they were all valiant and elite troops. Every soldier was powerful. It was not difficult for Abia to gather 600,000 soldiers. But would these 600,000 soldiers be of any use? What was a main battle army? This was a main battle army. This was an unstoppable force. The difference in strength was obvious. No matter how loyal, brave, and desperate Abia's 600,000 soldiers were, it was useless. This was an insurmountable gap. Ron still had a certain amount of confidence in the battle between the experts of the sacred domain. Other than himself and D. Lin, there were also Archmage Prats, Dragon Knight Montegot, Killer St. Hill, the newly joined Kay, and Shea's grandfather, Corbett, who was on his way. There were 7 people in total. Although they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, Ron was not afraid. However, the 60,000 soldiers of the Holy See gave him a headache. This was an unparalleled force. The arrival of this force would cause the newly born Scourge Church and the secular forces under its protection to suffer a devastating blow. The Scourge Church was Ron's blood, sweat, and tears. It was also the lifelong wish of Homeland's grandfather. Ron definitely did not want the Scourge Church to be destroyed in the flames of war again. "I can only go all out now." Ron gritted his teeth and fiercely punched the railing. He had made up his mind. Chapter 562. Pompeii City was bustling with activity. The city was filled with a tense atmosphere, and the shadow of war shrouded everyone's hearts. Some civilians stood on top of the city wall. Most of them were thin and malnourished, holding all kinds of tools in their hands as they reinforced the walls of Pompeii City. Although such actions did not have much effect, they were still nervous and busy. Ron, Juliana, and the others stood on top of the city wall and looked into the distance. When their gazes fell on the civilians, everyone could not help but look away. Yesterday, I mobilized more than 100,000 civilians to reinforce the walls of Pompeii City. I hope it will be of some use, Juliana said with a wry smile. She did not think that doing so would have any effect, but for now, this is all that can be done. Thinking that Pompeii City was going to experience another war, everyone's hearts were heavy. In war, the civilians were the ones who sacrificed the most. Juliana sighed. Over the years, the Holy Roman Empire has caused the people of Abia to suffer. They did not treat Abia as their territory at all, and they levied exorbitant taxes on the people of Abia. As the poorest province of the Holy Roman Empire, the taxes of the people of Abia were several times higher than those of other provinces. The people of Abia were poor, but the oligarchs and aristocrats of the Holy Roman Empire were rich. The Holy See was also not a good thing. They opened a church here, forced the people to join the church, and levied a 11% tax on the believers. That is, 1/10 of the believers' income was given to the Holy See. This is not including other taxes. The Holy See is really abominable. Vivian's eyes flashed with a green light. Although her injuries were almost healed, she was still weak, and her walking was not very natural. After our uprising in Pompeii City, the people of Abia, who had been oppressed by the Holy See and the Holy Roman Empire, angrily rushed into the Holy Cathedral in the city, destroyed these harmful doctrines, and killed their believers. The matter was very big for a time. This shows that the Holy See is unpopular in Abia. When the kingdom was first established as the new king of Abia, I tried my best to reduce their taxes, but the country was in a difficult situation. Juliana shook her head. Now, the national treasury is almost empty. After listening to Juliana's words, Ron had to admit that she was a good queen. Although she was sometimes too selfish, she still thought about the kingdom. Unfortunately, after just a few days of peace, war is coming again. Julianne shook her head helplessly. Will Pompeii be destroyed by the flames of war again? Everyone fell silent. After all, anyone could guess the result, even if they used their toes to think. Cadena said hatefully, "The Holy See is so arrogant and despotic. Is there nothing we can do about it?" "Of course there is a way." Corbett, who was standing by the side, said slowly, "In a large-scale battle like this, which even involves the powerhouses of the sacred domain, generally speaking, the council won't sit idly by." Unfortunately, Corbett shook his head. The chairman and senators of the council are all not here. They are all powerhouses of the sacred domain, so their words are useful. The other counselors are powerhouses of the sacred domain, so they won't care about this mess. The Holy See really knows how to pick a *king time. Ron asked curiously, where did the chairman and senators of the council go? And Grandma Undine? Haha. Corbett shook his head slightly. No one knows where they went. Undine didn't tell me. All I know is that the 5 powerhouses of the council have temporarily left the Noah continent. Ron was slightly surprised. When will they come back? I don't know, Corbett said straightforwardly. Among the 5 of them, there seems to be some kind of agreement. Even if it's someone close to them, they can't reveal their whereabouts, so even I don't know. Ron carefully chewed on Corbett's words, confirming them with Kay's, and slowly nodded. Kay's grandfather had also left the Noah continent, so he could run out. It seems that we can't count on the council. Juliana frowned, her face showing an uneasy expression. She sighed. Young master, I'm afraid we're in big trouble. Pompeii City can't be defended. I think we shouldn't make any plans, right? Is that so? Ron lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then said loudly, "Passively defending has never been my character. If possible, I want to take the initiative to attack." "You mean to take the initiative to attack?" Juliana smiled. "Young master, do you think we have such strength? Our army is completely different from their elite corps. Even if we have several times more people than them, it's still possible that we'll be defeated. How do you know if you haven't tried?" Ron was ambitious, and his eyes shone with confidence. "We'll take the initiative to attack, find a way to ambush them, and use the advantage of numbers to fight a beautiful battle of annihilation. I think it's still possible." Juliana smiled, but didn't say anything. At this time, Kate jumped up. "That's right. We can't always passively take a beating. Ron, leave this matter to me. No matter if it's a saint-level expert or any other opponent, Kai, will definitely make it so that they won't be able to leave alive." Upon hearing the word battle, Kai grew excited and he thumped his chest loudly. "All right then." Seeing that Kay, a magical beast from the sacred domain, had such a strong fighting spirit, Juliana couldn't bear to dampen his enthusiasm, so she nodded in agreement. In fact, she was also looking forward to a miracle. Lachlan, here, fully armed and obscene. Swordmaster Lachlan stepped forward and saluted with a clap sound. Juliana said in an unquestionable tone, "Lachlan, I order you to lead 80,000 Abia troops and follow Lord Kay of the Beaumont family to take the initiative to attack and ambush their small team. Remember, don't get entangled with their main force. Instead, use the method of dividing and surrounding them, and fight a beautiful battle of annihilation. When soldiers, people, and time for our kingdom of Ebia." "Yes, Your Majesty," Lachlan said loudly. "I promise to complete the task." After saying that, he strode away to accept the order. Juliana sighed. "Young master, let's discuss how to defend Pompeii City. Kingdom of Ebia, Shearing Wind Basin." The terrain of Shearing Wind Basin was like a funnel, surrounded by mountains on all sides. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. It was a typical pocket formation and also a good place for an ambush. Lachlan, Kay, and the 80,000 troops of Abia were lying in ambush here. At the foot of the mountain, the 80,000 troops were densely stationed. There was only one path from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. All the high ground in Shearing Wind Basin was occupied by the Abia troops. They were quietly lying in ambush in the underbrush, vigilantly looking down. "Lord Kay, I'll go and inspect the military affairs first. If there's any situation, I'll immediately come back and report to you." In a huge tent, Lachlan bowed slightly. As a great general, his words were full of politeness, because he knew that the magical beast in front of him was abnormally terrifying. She could pinch him to death with just one finger. Go. Kay's old body half reclined on a long chair. She said indifferently, "If there's anything, just tell me directly. Except for the powerhouses of the divine realm, I'm not afraid of anyone in the sacred domain. You're Ron's subordinate. I'll protect you." "Thank you, Lord Kay." Lachlan bowed again. He thought to himself, "I'm not Ron's subordinate." But he didn't say too much to Kay. He lowered his head and walked out of the tent. At this time, a soldier quickly ran over, looking nervous. "What's the situation?" Lachlan took the initiative to welcome him and asked. "Reporting to Lord, we've discovered an army in front. They're wearing white clothes and white armor. They're well-equipped, full of spirit, and powerful. It seems that they're the vanguard sent by the Holy See. They've already advanced to the periphery of Shearing Wind Basin. It seems that they're preparing to enter. How many people do they have?" Lachlan was startled and immediately asked. "There are more than 3,000 of them," the soldier said. "More than 3,000. More than 3,000. Haha, this is a heaven-sent opportunity." When Lachlan heard this, he rubbed his hands together. "I don't believe that the 80,000 people of our Abia army can't defeat the 3,000 people of the Holy See. This time, I'll make sure they don't return." Lachlan's eyes shone with excitement. "Pass down the order immediately. Everyone, get into position and get ready for battle. When they enter Shearing Wind Basin, listen to my order and attack at any time." "Yes, Lord." After Lachlan gave the order, he turned around and returned to the tent. With a hint of flattery, he said to Kay, "Lord Kay, our chance to perform a meritorious deed has come." Then he explained the situation to her. "We have to find a way to annihilate them all. Leave none alive," Lachlan said loudly. "Good, very good." Kay stood up. She clenched her fists and made cracking sounds. "Very good. I don't have time to exercise my muscles and bones. This time, I'll definitely go on a killing spree and let them see the power of the Beaumont clan." While speaking, Kay's eyes revealed an ominous glint like a ferocious beast, causing Lachlan to tremble with fear. "Lord Boulder, Shearing Wind Basin is in front of us." At the foot of another mountain in Shearing Wind Basin, a Holy See soldier who looked like a staff officer pointed at Shearing Wind Basin and said, "According to the map, this place is difficult to attack and easy to defend. It's easy to be ambushed by the enemy. Should we send people to investigate?" "There's no need." The one leading the vanguard was Holy Knight Boulder of the Holy Knight Regiment. He was a middle-aged man with a tall stature. Like all Holy Knights, his deep eyes were full of unswerving determination. They were the symbol of courage, loyalty, and power. Along the way, the Abia army simply couldn't withstand a single blow. They would flee at the sight of us. Therefore, they definitely won't ambush us. Boulder said, "We have to speed up and kill our way to the base camp of those heretics as soon as possible. That place called Undercity. But it's better to be a bit more cautious." That staff officer said cautiously. "I said no need, so there's no need." Boulder's tone was clearly somewhat displeased. "Don't forget, we are an elite army. We can't be compared to those ordinary Abia army. Hee, they want to ambush us? I still want to be ambushed by them. Let's see who will fall in the end." Boulder's face revealed a smile. Chapter 563. Boulder didn't listen to his squire's advice and insisted on entering the unscouted Shearing Wind Basin. The endless Gobi Desert was precisely the Shearing Wind Basin. The center of the basin was filled with yellow sand. Under Boulder's lead, the vanguard of the Holy Legion slowly moved like a moving earthworm. There were paladins, swordsmen, priests, assassins, mages, crossbowmen, and other professions in the army. Without exception, they all had decent strength, and some of them had even reached the level of master. The midday sun shone on the ground, giving off a glaring radiance. Stepping on the scorching yellow sand, a sizzling sound could be heard. Small lizards in the sand poked their heads out of their holes, curiously sizing up the large group of uninvited guests in front of them. The hot air was suffocating. This damned weather. Boulder wiped his sweat with his hand. Even a powerhouse of the sacred domain was drenched in sweat in this hot weather. In the desert sky, the air was thin, and the scenery on the ground was reflected in the sky, forming a strange landscape. Those who often walked in the desert knew that this was called a mirage. Suddenly, Boulder's gaze froze. Then, his eyes revealed an expression of disbelief. Because in the sky, an army appeared. It was the army of Abia. The soldiers of the army were wearing Abia's uniform. Voila! A roar like that of the mountains and seas surged out. The sound from all directions converged into a wave of sound, sweeping towards the Holy Legion. Then, from all over the mountains and plains, figures suddenly appeared one after another like ghosts. They held weapons in their hands and stood majestically on high ground. What? The Holy Legion was shaken by the sudden appearance of the army. The densely packed figure showed that the number of people was not small, more than 10 times their number. At the same time, the Holy See soldiers also confirmed a fact. They were surrounded. On top of a protruding rock, Lachlan took a majestic step forward. His entire body was wrapped in iron armor, only revealing his nose and eyes. He held a one-handed shield in his left hand and a one-handed longsword in his right. He was in high spirits as he waved his longsword and shouted, "Let's go. Sons of Abia, the time to render meritorious service has come. Kill! Kill!" Banners fluttered and battle cries shook the heavens. For a moment, a strong cloud of dust surged in all directions. Tens of thousands of people rushed down the slope together, and the earth also produced a slight tremor. As expected, we still fell into an ambush. I was too careless. Boulder faintly smiled. In the face of such a predicament, there wasn't a trace of panic on his face. He then said in a deep voice, "Everyone, get ready for battle." Whoosh! The well-trained Sacred Legion raised their weapons. The soldiers in the Holy Sea's uniform looked solemn. Facing the attack of tens of thousands of people, there was no trace of panic on their faces. Priests cast a shield. Mages prepare to attack. Paladins, activate your auras. A series of orders spread out from Boulder's mouth, and it didn't take long for the entire sacred core to move. Like a sophisticated machine, everything appeared to be in order. Attack! Whoosh! 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 Following Boulder's order, dozens of magic bullets soared into the air and blasted towards the densely packed Abia soldiers. Boom! Boom! Countless sparks and ice flames exploded, and many Abia soldiers were blasted into pieces. Some are burned to ashes by the magic flames. Crossbowmen, get ready. Whoosh! The crossbowmen took a step forward and squatted down. The steel crossbows in their hands were aimed at the Abia soldiers in the distance. The sharp tips of the crossbows emitted a cold glint. The crossbowmen were the Holy Sea's special long-range attack unit. Their main purpose was to make up for the lack of mages. These heavy steel crossbows were abnormally powerful, and they fought using Do Chi. As their Do Chi level increased, they were divided into apprentice crossbowmen, archers, elite archers, and holy archers. Fire! Following Boulder's order, the crossbowmen's steel crossbows shot out like a string of arrows. Whoosh! 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 Under the dense rain of arrows, the Abia soldiers fell one after another. Ouch! I got shot in the leg. It hurts. Don't leave me behind. The Abia soldiers screamed miserably. The arrows that were imbued with Do Chi pierced through their bodies and left large holes. Just a single arrow took the life of an Abia soldier. How could this be? After losing the first battle, Lachlan was dumbfounded. Who was the one ambushing who now? It was as if he had become the one being ambushed. Seeing his soldiers fall one by one, Lachlan's eyes turned red. He waved his sword and shouted, "Kill! They are too few in number. We'll be fine as long as we charge through." Just as Lachlan had said, the Holy Sea's vanguard only had 3,000 men. It was indeed too few. Facing the encirclement of the Abia soldiers, they gradually became powerless. Although their crossbowmen were strong, they couldn't defend from all sides. Soon, tens of thousands of Abia soldiers charged into their formation and engaged in close combat. Boulder showed no fear. He drew his sword and cut down an Abia soldier in front of him. For the glory of God, kill. Pursue the faith of God. Spread the glory of God. Apart from me, there is no other God. I am the supreme. I'm the greatest. At this time, the Holy Sea soldiers began to chant in a low voice. A milky white light began to twine around Boulder's body. As the light flowed, it formed a shield that protected his body. Blessings of God Guangming. The Holy Sea's strength was astonishing. After receiving the blessings of God, the soldiers became even more ferocious. Their attack power and defense were greatly increased. Facing enemies several times their size, they showed no fear. One by one, the Abia soldiers were cut down. Blood flowed out and dyed the ground red. However, their counterattacks were pitifully weak. Their swords and sabers only left faint marks on the bodies of the Holy Sea soldiers. On the other hand, the Holy Sea soldiers were killed one by one. The Abia army suffered heavy casualties. The great sword masters and honorary knights of the Holy Sea were even more merciless. One by one, they killed one of the Abia soldiers. It was a one-sided massacre. In the eyes of the great sword masters, they were like ants. No, impossible. Lachlan, who was watching from a distance, felt his limbs go cold. His body trembled violently. His eyes were wide open, revealing a look of disbelief. Was this their true strength? 80,000 men, 80,000 men. An army of 80,000 men was actually defeated by the Holy Sea's 3,000 men. Haha, simply overestimating your capabilities. Boulder sneered. He hadn't even made a move yet. I'll give you a little boost. Boulder smiled faintly. He raised the scepter in his hand, and a dazzling golden light suddenly burst out. High morale. With a whoosh, the golden light spread over the battlefield. Wherever the golden light reached, an eagle with its wings spread out appeared above the heads of the soldiers. For a moment, all the soldiers of the Holy See were shocked. Awoo! Kill him! Kill! 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 In a flash, the soldiers of the Holy See were excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They shouted, howled, and their battle cries shook the heavens. On the other hand, the soldiers of Abia were in low spirits, utterly defeated by the enemy. With a clang, Lachlan threw down his sword and knelt on the ground in a daze. Faced with this hopeless disparity, he was disheartened and lost all will to fight. Could it be that New Abia will be destroyed once more? Lachlan looked at the sky, sorrowfully thinking. Suddenly, a dark gray figure rushed out from the crowd, pouncing on the Holy See like a tiger or a wolf. It was a youth with a grave and stern face. Where did this brat come from? He's not even wearing armor. Do you want to die? A master honorary knight sneered, and without thinking, he waved his scepter. Heavy strike. The scepter exploded with an intense light as it smashed down at the youth. According to common sense, this thin and weak youth's head would definitely burst open, and he would die an unnatural death in an instant. He would not even have the time to taste the pain. How pitiful, dying at such a young age. The honorary knight had a trace of sympathy in his eyes. At this time, something unexpected happened. The gray-clothed youth smiled coldly, stretched out his hand, and firmly grasped the heavy scepter. A powerful force burst out, and in a flash, the brilliance of the scepter was overshadowed. What? The honorary knight could not believe his eyes. At this time, he only felt a surge of power, and his body twisted like a fried dough twist. Then, he lost consciousness. Not good, he killed the captain. A Holy See soldier exclaimed. Kill him. Avenge the captain. Kill. The Holy See soldiers abandoned their opponents in front of them and madly rushed at the youth. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people surrounded the young man. They were all at the master level or above. More than 10 weapons were pointed at him. The youth smiled coldly, and with a shake of his arms, a golden fist surged out. Bang! 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 More than 10 bodies flew up like sandbags and heavily fell to the ground. When they fell to the ground, they were already corpses. What? Everyone was shocked by the youth's strength. Who was he to kill the honorary knight with a single punch? The youth showed his prowess, and like a tiger in a flock of sheep, he rushed into the Holy See soldiers and wantonly slaughtered. Wherever the wind from his fist went, if not death, then injury. No one was a match for him, and for a moment, a hole was torn in the formation that the Holy See had struggled to maintain. When the Abia soldiers saw this, they were shocked. They took the opportunity to follow behind the youth and further expand their victory. The Holy See was on the verge of collapse. Lachlan saw this, and hope rekindled in his heart. Go to hell, all of you. The youth's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He suddenly shouted, and his fist hit the ground like the wind. Boom! A loud sound was heard. Suddenly, a golden light burst out, and an irresistible force burst out. The ground cracked, and smoke billowed. Wherever it went, the enemy fell to the ground. Ha! The youth smiled coldly and slowly withdrew his fist. In front of him, a path had been cleared. Around him, there were corpses of the Holy See soldiers lying on the ground. Many of them were still alive, weakly moaning, and looking at him with a trace of fear. The youth looked at his masterpiece and smiled with satisfaction. At this moment, his expression suddenly changed, and he swung his fist back. Boom! The golden power burst out, entangling with the dazzling white light. The fist and the giant hammer collided, and huge sparks burst out. Who the hell are you? The one who attacked was bolder. At this moment, he was holding the giant hammer with both hands, and his fist was locked in a stalemate with the youth. From the youth's fist, he could feel a heart-trembling power. The youth did not answer. He smiled coldly, revealing a row of white teeth. At this moment, he suddenly growled, and then his body underwent a huge change. The youth's body grew bigger, and his clothes were torn. Long golden hair grew on his body, and his hands turned into claws. His handsome face was ferocious like a beast, and his mouth revealed sharp teeth. What? Boulder's eyes were wide open, and there was a look of disbelief in his eyes. This was because he recognized the terrifying creature in front of him. Chapter 564. A 5 to 6 meter tall, giant magical beast stood in front of everyone. The appearance of the Beaumont caused panic. Everyone's face changed under the fearsome name of this adult Beaumont. Lord K transformed. What? Lord K is actually a Beaumont. What a powerful magical beast from the sacred domain. We'll definitely win. Kill. Seeing K transform, the Abia army's morale was greatly boosted and they began to counterattack. Why? You, this magical beast, will interfere in our war with the Holy See, Boulder said in a deep voice. His voice was not loud, but it was clearly heard by Kay. This will not benefit you or the Beaumont clan. Kay smiled coldly. It's simple. Ron is my brother. I will not allow anyone to bully him. After saying that, he did not reply. With a low roar, he punched towards Boulder. Divine defense. Boulder shouted coldly, and a holy light spread out. Immediately after, a holy shield opened up in front of him, forming a light screen around him. It enveloped Boulder completely, making it impossible to attack. Hee. The divine defense cannot be broken, but I can attack you. After activating the divine defense, Boulder's confidence was greatly boosted. He raised his giant hammer and began to counterattack. A defensive shield? Break for me. Kay did not even look at it. With a sneer, he punched out. The golden Beaumont's strength exploded and fiercely hit the light screen around Boulder, producing a dull sound. After being hit by the giant fist, the light of the divine defense dimmed a lot. However, it managed to block Kay's fist. What? Kay was surprised. His unstoppable fist was blocked for the first time. This tortoise shell is really hard. Compared to Kay's surprise, Boulder's shock was even more unbearable. The opponent's power was so strong that a single punch was enough to offset most of his power. Even though he managed to block the opponent's attack, Boulder was not happy at all. Damn it, I'll hit you. Kay became ruthless all of a sudden. He swung his fists like a windmill and struck out dozens of times in an instant. All of them bombarded Boulder's divine defense light screen. Bang, bang, bang. On the battlefield, a series of muffled sounds rang out. Kay was attacking ferociously. His strength was so great that Boulder was forced to retreat continuously. A deep ravine appeared under his feet. The light screen of the divine defense flickered repeatedly, as if it would disappear at any time. Boulder was almost beaten to the point of vomiting blood. Kay's strength was too strong. Some of her power even penetrated his defense and bombarded his body. No, I can't let him continue to beat me like this. Boulder clenched his teeth and swung his giant hammer. In a flash, he launched a counterattack. Boulder understood that his divine defense could not hold on for much longer. Once it was broken, he would have to face Kay's chilling fist. Thunderbolt strike. The giant hammer and the fist collided once again. An intense ray of light burst out. A shocking power burst out from the center. Like smoke scattering in all directions, the surrounding soldiers were shaken to the point of being thrown off their horses. After forcing back that terrifying Beaumont with great difficulty, Boulder heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, he immediately used the self-healing light. A light beam descended and quickly healed his injuries. Kay frowned. Although this holy knight in front of him was not strong, he was very difficult to deal with. At this moment, Boulder shouted loudly, "Pass down my order, cross cover and retreat. Immediately retreat from the shearing wind basin." Under Boulder's order, the well-trained Sacred Legion immediately changed their formation. They withdrew their forces and gathered together. Some other soldiers launched an attack at Kay. Countless magic and crossbow bolts were shot from the Sacred Legion's side. Their target was the same, which was to bombard Kay's body. Kay was forced to retreat again and again, crying out in pain. Although these attacks were not fatal, they could still injure Beaumont. At this moment, Kay's golden hair was stained with some bloodstains. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The Sacred Legion was not in the mood to continue fighting. They sacrificed some of their experts to block Kay's footsteps. The rest of the troops quickly withdrew from the shearing wind basin. Don't let them escape. Chase after them. At this moment, Lachlan was overjoyed. He immediately realized that this was an opportunity to pursue and attack. He immediately shouted, "Don't chase." At this moment, Kay calmed down and stopped Lachlan's crazy behavior. In the battle just now, Kay felt that she had underestimated the opponent's paladin. Although she had the strongest attack method, the opponent had the strongest defensive skill. In terms of strength alone, the opponent was not necessarily below her. If they continued to fight, even Kay did not have much of a chance of winning. High defense, resistance, and self-healing. What class was the most difficult to deal with? Naturally, it was the paladin. If he died or was defeated, the rest of the Abia army could only be slaughtered by the Sacred Legion. Yes, Madam Kay. Lachlan also quickly calmed down. Although he was unwilling, if not for Kay's help, he would not have dared to pursue. In Pompeii City, in the main hall of the Abia Palace, after listening to Lachlan's report, everyone fell into silence. They were all shocked by the bloody facts in front of them. 80,000 people besieged 3,000 people. In a situation where they had the advantage in numbers, the opponent retreated unscathed. What was an extraordinary shame and humiliation? This was an extraordinary shame and humiliation. Many of them were soldiers. If they really fought such a terrible battle, not only would His Majesty blame them, they would not even have the face to live. However, they knew that Lachlan was not facing an ordinary army, but an army that only had the strong and not the weak. Without the burden of the weak, such an army could erupt with powerful fighting strength. Although they had powerhouses from the sacred domain, the opponent also had powerhouses, and they were not weak. It was easy to understand why the battle had turned out this way. After Lachlan finished his report, the main hall was still silent. Only the sound of light breathing could be heard. In the end, it was Juliana who slowly opened her mouth. "Everyone, in this situation, what should we do?" No one answered. Knowing that the opponent had such a huge advantage, some people thought that it would be better to surrender. Juliana could only look at Ron beside her for help. Faced with such a dilemma, Ron also felt very troubled. He finally understood that although it was difficult to cultivate the strength of the sacred domain, it was even more difficult to establish a force. It was no wonder that many powerhouses from the sacred domain would rather be guardians than establish a force. Guardians could just pat their butts and leave, but could Ron leave? The Scourge Church that he had painstakingly built was destroyed. There would be no more opportunities in the future, and no one would trust him. Ron also saw Juliana's gaze. At this time, he also knew that he had to come out and say something. Otherwise, the people's hearts would be scattered again, and no one would have the heart to resist anymore. Everyone. At this time, Ron stood up and cleared his throat. In an instant, everyone's eyes were cast on him, including Juliana. A glimmer of hope ignited in everyone's eyes. However, Ron's next words poured cold water on them. The enemy is too powerful to be stopped. I think the best way is to evacuate Pompeii City. Ron said faintly. What? Evacuate Pompeii City? Did I hear that right? Impossible. That can't be done. Pompeii City is the king of the new kingdom of Abia. Evacuating Pompeii City means the destruction of the new Abia. As soon as Ron's voice fell, the entire hall seemed to explode. When everyone heard this, they all began to talk about it. Most of their opinions were against it. Looking at the chaotic hall, Juliana frowned slightly. She was not afraid of death. If she could, she was willing to live and die with Pompeii City. However, she was reluctant to give up the foundation left by her father and the lovely people of Abia. Ron, are you sure you're not joking? Juliana asked quietly. You think? Do I still have time to joke? Ron said. Juliana nodded. So you're serious? Say it. What's your plan? No. Ron said bluntly. I don't have any plan. I only know that Pompeii City can't be defended. Use the defense of Undercity, shrink our forces, and fight to the death with the army of the Holy See. Maybe, only then can we have a chance of survival. Ron said slowly. Juliana thought for a long time. She had to think that Ron was right. Besides this method, there was no other way. Very good. Juliana slammed the table. "We will immediately evacuate Pompeii City, take all the food, supplies, and soldiers, and then shrink our forces and retreat to Undercity. Your Majesty, don't. Your Majesty, please reconsider." The ministers of the Kingdom of Ebbia objected. Even Ron's classmate Fatty's father, the Minister of Finance, was against it. Carlos was also among the objectors. The kingdom had just been established, and in order to do a good job in the country's finances, he had spent a lot of effort, but now he had to withdraw. No one would be willing to do so. No need to say it. Juliana's pretty face was frosty. "This is my decision. Execute it." "Yes, Your Majesty." The ministers had no choice but to nod in agreement. During the war, efficiency was very fast. With Her Majesty's order, the entire country's machinery was operating frantically. For a time, all the residents of Pompeii City received the news of evacuating the capital. Although full of shock and reluctance, the Ebbia army and civilians carried out Her Majesty's order very well. Except for a few people who chose to stay, most people chose to leave. On the plains, the Ebbia army formed a neat formation and walked through the mountains. Juliana requisitioned a large number of carriages to transport supplies. The Ebbia soldiers and civilians majestically evacuated Pompeii City and headed for Undercity. Juliana looked at the empty Pompeii City, and her eyes were red. She almost shed tears, but she quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, and her face showed her usual determination. "I will definitely come back." Chapter 565. After the Ebbia army withdrew from Pompeii City, the Sacred Legion easily occupied the city. Juliana and the others retreated in a hurry, leaving behind a lot of wealth in Pompeii City. However, the Sacred Legion was not tempted by this huge wealth. After a short rest, they quickly went south and continued their pursuit in the direction of Gloom City. At this moment, Gloom City had completely changed. The thick walls had been continuously reinforced and were somewhat white. A curtain of darkness shrouded the city, dimming the light in the sky. Once they entered the city, it was more like a huge fortress. The entire city was heavily guarded. There were sentries every 3 steps, and there were soldiers patrolling at all times. The soldiers were wearing the uniforms of the Scourge Church, with a skull tattooed on their chests. When they saw them, they curiously sized them up. When they saw Ron, their faces showed a respectful expression. They bowed from a distance and left. "They are all students of Calamity Academy." Ron smiled and introduced them. "Gloom City has changed a lot." Looking at everything in Gloom City, Juliana sighed in her heart. Indeed, the defense of Gloom City was much higher than that of Pompeii City. "I don't know why, but once I enter Gloom City, I feel a lot safer. Follow me." Ron smiled slightly. After having people settle down the Ebbia army, he led Juliana and the others into the city. Following a cave-like thing, they entered the ground, passed through an underground river, and finally arrived at the Hall of the Dead in the Scourge Church's main altar. This is your Scourge Church's main altar?" Juliana was dumbfounded. "It's actually underground?" "Yes." Ron smiled. This was also inspired by the buildings in Manchester. Living underground is always safer than living on the ground. Juliana looked at the marks on the wall and nodded. "The amount of work is quite large, right? It's all done by the church members." Ron smiled. In just over a month, the Scourge Church had gained a lot of followers. They were all necromancers scattered all over the continent of Noah. They did the most menial work and were looked down upon everywhere. Here, they were treated as equals. Those who had been abandoned by the world because they had practiced the wrong necromancy magic came here with pious faith and contributed to the construction of the Undercity. There were more than 100,000 of them, and the number was still increasing. The Calamity Academy was already overcrowded. Even those who had only learned necromancy magic for a few days were appointed as instructors to teach the newcomers necromancy magic and correct their misconceptions about necromancy magic. Of course, I still have to thank someone. Ron smiled and waved his hand. "Brother 25, come out." "Greetings, Your Majesty." Fatty Gid walked out from behind Ron and bowed to Juliana with a smile. Juliana looked and smiled. Hee, I recognize you. You're Lord Carlos' son, right? Yes. Fatty smiled. I didn't expect your majesty to still remember me. The two chatted about pornographic novels. After a while, an Abia soldier hurriedly ran to Juliana and whispered a few words in her ear. Ron was talking to Fatty, but he had been paying attention to Juliana's expression. He saw that Juliana's face was first filled with shock, then anger. Juliana was so angry that she gritted her teeth and cursed. Damn the holy sea. Damn it. Your Majesty, what's wrong? Ron asked. He had a feeling that something had happened. As they were talking about Juliana, it turned out that the Abia civilians who had escaped from Pompeii City had been a little slow and had been intercepted by the Holy Sea's army at the Joseph River. Those priests who believed in Guangming believed that the souls of these people had been tainted by the devil and wanted to purify them. Hearing this news, the Abia cavalry regiment in charge of escorting the civilians immediately went back to rescue them and fought with those people. After Juliana finished speaking, everyone's faces were filled with anger. Cadena said indignantly, "How dare they attack civilians? How abominable! For the Holy See, there's no such thing as civilians or injustice. There's only the difference between believing and not believing. Those who believe in their God are their friends, and those who don't are their enemies." Finance Minister Carlos said coldly, and then his face sank. "These damn bastards. What should we do now?" Lachlan asked, his face showing deep worry. "Our army can't fight against them. There's no chance of winning." Juliana didn't answer. There were faint tears in her eyes. The last batch of people who had withdrawn were her most loyal followers, but now, forget it, let them come back. Juliana sighed. Don't pester them anymore. Those civilians, let them go. Everyone's heart was heavy, but they knew that this was the only choice at present. Ron thought quickly, moved his mouth, and said, "I'll go take a look." What? Everyone froze for a moment. They couldn't believe their ears. Cadena hurriedly said, "Ron, you can't leave here. Undercity needs you." "Yeah, Ron, why don't I go instead of you?" D-Lin also persuaded. "I'll definitely save them for you." "Yeah, Ron, there's a more important battle waiting for us." Juliana also persuaded. "It's better for you to stay here. The Scourge Church is the guardian of the kingdom of Abia. The civilians of Abia are also my people. So, no matter what, I won't sit back and do nothing." Ron smiled, his eyes overflowing with strong confidence. "I'll go. It'll be fine." Ron insisted on going. Everyone couldn't persuade him, so they had to compromise. "Ron, you must be careful." Before leaving, Juliana reminded him again. "If you can't save them, then forget it. Don't put yourself in danger." "Don't worry." Ron nodded slightly. Then, a huge bone dragon rose up and flew into the sky. It broke through the fog above Undercity and flew towards the north. "Ron, nothing must happen to you." Becerra stood in the crowd and silently prayed as she watched Ron's departing figure. Beside the Joseph River, there was a sea of blood. Countless corpses were lying in a pool of blood. Judging from their clothes, they were all Abia civilians. A group of about 5,000 to 6,000 cavalrymen, armed with weapons, were coldly confronting the 300 or so Sacred Legion soldiers. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Behind them, there was a large group of civilians who were trembling in fear. Their faces were pale, and their supplies were scattered all over the ground. Some of them were lying on the ground and crying loudly. The 300 or so Sacred Legion soldiers looked relaxed. They didn't even bat an eyelid in the face of an enemy several times their size. Guangming Law Enforcement Team. This was the name of the team in front of them. They wore white clothes and white armor, and their expressions were cold. They sneered at the pitiful Abia civilians. They were the hand of God, the masters of death. They were also demons from hell. As the most mysterious group of people in the Holy See, their existence was to bring death to those who didn't believe in God. "Do you think you can stop us with just you?" At this time, a middle-aged man with a wretched appearance smiled. "Let me tell you, if God wants him dead, he won't live." As if sensing the impending danger, the war horses snorted uneasily, and the air was a little suffocating. At this time, A person who seemed to be the commander of the Ebia cavalry regiment took a step forward and sternly shouted, "Release him immediately." They referred to the soldiers who were captured in the first wave of attack. In order to protect the Ebia civilians behind them, some of them even sacrificed their lives. Are you talking about them? The wretched middle-aged man smiled. With a flick of his finger, more than 10 Ebia soldiers were pushed out. The Ebia soldiers who were captured looked listless. It was obvious that they had been tortured badly. The Ebia commander's face twitched a few times. These soldiers who were captured were their brothers who lived with them day in and day out. None of them felt good when they fell into the hands of the enemy. The wretched middle-aged man chuckled. His laughter was indescribably hair-raising. With a flick of his finger, a spark flew out from his fingertip and landed on the nearest Ebia soldier. Look, this is the result of going against God Guangming. The wretched middle-aged man laughed arrogantly. Bastard, go to hell. Release them. The Ebia soldiers' eyes turned red. They pulled out their weapons and prepared to fight, but they were held back by the commander. Do you want to release them? The wretched middle-aged man laughed. What do you want? The commander calmed down and said coldly. He didn't dare to act rashly. From the battle just now, he could see that although the enemy was few in number, they were terrifyingly strong. So many of them were no match for them. The wretched middle-aged man in front of him hadn't made a move yet, but the commander felt that this wretched middle-aged man was much more terrifying than the others. It's very simple. The wretched middle-aged man smiled. Those who blaspheme against God should die. You including you. He pointed at the Ebia soldiers and the civilians. You should all go to hell. Not a single one should be left alive. As he spoke, the Guangming law enforcement squad revealed a cruel smile. They looked at the people in front of them. In their eyes, these people were no longer people, but corpses. Corpses that could be slaughtered. Balls of light began to condense, and a sharp killing intent filled the air. The aura of an expert filled the entire space. The commander of the Ebia cavalry gritted his teeth. Fight! Kill! Following the commander's order, the Ebia cavalry began to charge. The sound of iron hooves stomping on the ground made a loud sound. They waved their shiny blades and fiercely slashed at the Guangming law enforcement squad. Hee, you overestimate yourselves. The wretched middle-aged man sneered. He grabbed with his hand. An array of light instantly appeared. God descends to the world, dispelling all darkness. Listen to the angel's song. May God's light shine on the continent. Obtain a new life in the darkness. The members of the light law enforcement team had solemn expressions on their faces. As they chanted, a bright light was emitted from the members of the light law enforcement team. It was as though they were covered in a layer of light, solemn, holy, and inviolable. Go to hell. Chapter 566. The powerful sabers were mixed with the sharp sound of the wind, and the warriors in white were still motionless. The corners of their mouths were slightly raised, revealing a mocking expression. At this time, it was as if an invisible wall had enveloped them. Following that, the vulgar middle-aged man's body emitted a dazzling light. Boom! With a loud sound, the Ebia soldiers' bodies floated up like the wind. For a moment, they were in a complete mess. Broken limbs, internal organs, and blood fell to the ground. The light swept across like a blade, and many people were instantly dismembered. Apart from the vulgar middle-aged man, the others did not even make a move. Their expressions were indifferent, as if they were watching a group of insects struggling helplessly. They were defeated. They were defeated in an instant. They were thoroughly defeated. They were like a group of ants trying to shake an elephant. How is this possible? The commander of the Ebia cavalry regiment had also been injured in this clash. One of his arms had been cut off and was dripping with blood. He endured the pain and clutched his injured arm as he struggled to stand up. There was a look of shock in his eyes. The enemy's strength was far beyond what he had imagined. Who are you? He asked in a deep voice. He felt that the vulgar man in front of him was not simple. Haha, the vulgar middle-aged man sneered. You are not qualified to ask about my identity. At this time, his eyes flashed with killing intent. A sharp light condensed again, and a huge ball of light was instantly formed. In an instant, Everyone's face changed. They saw that the ball of light floating in the sky contained an unparalleled power. The vulgar, middle-aged man laughed. His face was ferocious. "Go to hell, lowly insects. The great God will forgive your sins." As soon as his voice fell, the huge ball of light suddenly pressed down. It was as if the sun was descending, bringing with it a terrifying destructive power. It's over. Facing this irresistible power, the Abia people could only think of such a thought. The light shrouded down like a mountain, illuminating the surroundings. It was the light of death. Just when everyone was in despair, suddenly, a cyan cyclone appeared out of nowhere. It fiercely bombarded Olive, who was in the middle of casting a spell. Olive screamed and retreated a few steps. Who the F asterisk CK sneak attacked? It's actually a soul attack, damn it. Just as Olive was about to show off his might, he was ambushed. Shocked and angry, he couldn't help but roar. However, what welcomed him was an extremely cold aura. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying icy aura descended and formed ice sculptures among the Guangming law enforcement team. Then, those ice sculptures exploded one by one. Blood splattered everywhere, and broken limbs scattered all over the ground. The Guangming law enforcement squad's expression finally changed. They kept buffing themselves with their aura skills, killing Guangming's law enforcement team in an instant. The strength of the person who came was far beyond everyone's imagination. Abiya's people were stunned. They stood there in a daze with disbelief in their eyes. Someone came to save us. Who is it? Look, in the sky. All of the Abiya people knew that someone had saved them. When they looked up at the sky, they were all stunned. It's a guardian. It's the guardian, Lord Ron. Lord Ron came to save us. The one who appeared in the sky was indeed Ron. At this moment, he was proudly standing in the sky with his hands behind his back. His dark eyes were quietly looking down on the ground, as well as the group of white-clothed sacred law enforcement squad soldiers. As soon as he appeared, he used Death Coil and Frost Nova to bring death to the Guangming law enforcement squad. As long as they were Abiya people, they could basically recognize Ron. His appearance meant that everyone was saved. They all cheered. Ron coldly smiled. With a wave of his black robe, his thin figure slowly descended from the sky. The vulgar middle-aged man frowned. The appearance of the person in front of him gave him a great pressure. From the fact that he could float in the air, he was undoubtedly an expert of the sacred domain. The vulgar middle-aged man took a deep breath and asked, "Who are you, Your Excellency?" Ron didn't answer. He stared at the vulgar middle-aged man and slowly said, "Your Excellency is an expert of the sacred domain. You actually disregarded your status and attacked the weak. Don't you know how shameful it is? Or sad? An expert of the sacred domain?" All of the Abiya people were stunned. They didn't expect that the vulgar middle-aged man in front of them was actually an expert of the sacred domain. If that was the case, they wouldn't feel wronged if they were defeated by an expert of the sacred domain. That's right. The vulgar middle-aged man slowly said, "I'm the Holy Sea's governor of Guangming, Olive." He coldly stared at Ron, his eyes flashing with killing intent. "If I'm not wrong, Your Excellency should be the guardian of Abiya, known as the greatest heretic in the history of the Noah continent, Necromancer Ron." "That's right, I'm Ron." Ron straightforwardly admitted his identity. "When I was chased by your Holy See, Ron had nowhere to hide. Unfortunately, I finally stepped into the sacred domain." In other words, Ron paused and pointed the dragonbone staff in his hand. "From today onwards, the Holy See will die. You will definitely walk towards destruction." Ha ha ha. Guangming's Governor Olive laughed wildly. "Ron, what qualifications do you have to fight against our sacred domain expert? I admit that you becoming an expert of the sacred domain is beyond our expectations. But if you want to fight against the entire Holy See, I can only say that you're too naive. Is that so?" Ron was not disturbed by Olive's words. He smiled faintly. "You'll have to try to find out." As soon as he finished speaking, wisps of black fog slowly emerged from Ron's body. His aura continued to rise, and his black robe fluttered even though there was no wind. His killing intent slowly condensed. At this moment, the Radiant Archon no longer had the arrogance from before. His expression became serious, and with a flash of his hand, a huge shield appeared in his hand. In his right hand, there was a weapon that looked like a wind blade, which was neither fish nor fowl. Ron's pupils suddenly shrank. You're a spellbreaker? Spellbreakers were an extremely powerful and abnormal profession. They were good at close combat, and their defense was comparable to that of paladins. They were almost immune to magic and were the natural nemesis of mages. Due to the high requirements of talent for this profession, there were very few of them. The ranks of spellbreakers were the same as mages. They were divided into apprentice spellbreaker, intermediate spellbreaker, mage breaker, great mage breaker, and magic breaker. Among them, the magic breaker's strength had reached the level of the sacred domain. This Olive was a magic breaker. He not bad. Olive smiled faintly. He shook the blade in his hand, making a whooshing sound. Ron, today is the day you die. My existence restrains all magic, including your undead magic. After saying that, he did not waste any more words. With a whoosh, he rushed out. His thin body was like a nimble monkey. He suddenly jumped in front of Ron, and the wind blade in his hand slashed downwards. White bone spear. Ron did not even think. He suddenly threw out the white bone spear. The bone spear was as bright as white jade, and it flashed with a cold light as it shot towards Olive. When the two powerhouses of the sacred domain clashed, the scene was swept up by a gust of wind. The Abia people hurriedly dodged, and even the Guangming enforcers were forced back by the powerful force. Sir, your injury. An Abia soldier supported the cavalry regiment commander who had lost an arm. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. Use this opportunity to evacuate the civilians immediately. It will be too late if we delay any longer. The cavalry regiment commander clutched his severed arm. Blood flowed out continuously, but he still roared, "Don't worry about my injury. Saving people is more important." Yes, quick, leave everything behind. Saving our lives is more important. The Abia soldiers who could still move immediately went to the side of the frightened civilians and organized them to evacuate. The Guangming enforcers of the Holy See naturally saw this. Some of them tried to stop them, but unfortunately, Ron killed a few of them from a distance. The rest of them did not dare to move. With the strength of the sacred domain, Ron could easily kill those people. Boom! 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 Ron held the white bone spear in his hand and engaged in a fierce battle with Orleaf. Both sides exchanged more than 10 moves in the blink of an eye. Black fog filled the entire space, and powerful soul energy constantly seeped out. Orleaf's body seemed to be covered by a layer of light. His entire person was as dazzling as the sun. His attacks were not powerful, but each of them was extremely methodical. On the other hand, Ron seemed to be somewhat absent-minded. He was at a disadvantage as soon as he exchanged blows with Orleaf. Sir, the Abia civilians have finally evacuated from the Joseph River and reached the other side. They are now safe. Should we evacuate as well? At this time, a soldier reported to the cavalry regiment commander who had lost an arm. He respectfully bowed. Let's evacuate as well. The cavalry regiment commander stood on a small slope and looked deeply in Ron's direction. Lord Protector Ron specially came to save us. We cannot let his efforts go to waste. Seeing Ron fight with Orleaf, the cavalry regiment commander was somewhat moved. However, as a soldier, he carried out his duty well and did not let his emotions get the better of him. Moreover, they could not interfere in a battle between powerhouses of the sacred domain. There was no point in staying here. Yes, sir, the Abia soldier replied. At some point, he had brought over a war horse and helped the injured cavalry regiment commander onto it. The cavalry regiment commander climbed onto the horse with difficulty and looked deeply at Ron. Then, he slightly bent his waist and bowed. He waved his horsewhip. Let's go. Following the departure of the Abia cavalry regiment, the battle between Ron and Orleaf finally reached its climax. A white light flashed, and within the black fog, a glowing figure appeared. They have already left. Ron, can you finally fight seriously now? Guangming's magistrate Orleaf narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "You let them go on purpose." Ron said, "That's right. Olaf nodded and smiled. Those people are as weak as ants. It doesn't make a difference whether we kill them or not. My real target is you, Ron. As long as I can kill you, everything will be over. Orleaf revealed a sinister smile, his eyes filled with killing intent. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.